Gardens Neighborhood Association about feedback concerning the traffic study, and it looks like the association has embraced most of the major recommendations in that study, with the exception of the street closures. There was some concern expressed about them, but I think it's important that they did weigh in and that they found much to appreciate in those recommendations, and I'm sure you'll be getting a copy of it soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Williams. I'm going to comment about streetlights tonight. A number of months ago, the city attorney
start to look at when streetlights were out in the city and record those down. That's a
much commended policy and approach. In North Tacoma, I drove around before I came here, right around Jackie Park, and there was 10 streetlights out in and around Jackie Park itself. So it's gone from sort of being a concern that Pepco has an inability to repair our streetlights to absolutely ridiculous and incredibly aggravating. A number of residents over there have gone through the normal channels at Pepco to point out where lights are malfunctioning or out. I have done that. I've called the government relations office. I know that the city has also made attempts to contact Pepco and get the issue resolved. It's absolutely ridiculous. And now it's so ridiculous that this is a real safety issue. There was a brutal mugging of one of my constituents in North Tacoma on his walk home from the metro, right next to Jackie Park, right through the area where the streetlights are out. So it's not simply, hey, we'd like our lights on, they're convenient and nice. It's a real safety issue. The police chief is here tonight, and in previous conversations with me, he's noted that one of the great things about Tacoma Park is that we have trees, but they also do prevent light from getting down to the streets, which I understand that trade-off. I don't understand the trade-off when we simply can't get the streetlights back on. It's actually absolutely preposterous. I would ask the city manager, I know the city manager intends to step up the pressure on Pepco, and I commend that. We need to go further up the food chain. The second thing that I think we need to do, so to me there's sort of a short-term and a long-term approach to this issue. The short-term is we need to scream and yell and get the streetlights back on in the short-term quickly. The long-term issue is that there's just structural ineptitude at Pepco, and I think we need to look at resolving that through either a more structured process higher up in the organization at Pepco. Legal pressure might be another possibility. One of my constituents suggested maybe that Pepco didn't cause this crime, but they're pretty negligent in some ways and maybe a contributing factor. Maybe we should ask Doug Gansler to launch an investigation into Pepco's dealings with maintenance, how much they're putting into maintenance versus what the many municipalities are paying for maintenance. The last long-term suggestion recently, last October, there was a bill finally signed by the governor which allows municipalities to take over the streetlights from Pepco. When I first thought about this, I said, I don't think I want to go down that road. Probably increase costs for Tacoma Park. But I think this is something that actually further research should be done on. I know Darrell Braithwaite has already has requested has started on the process and requested a record of all the lights in the city. That's sort of the first process with Pepco. You have to buy the equipment from Pepco, and then you manage it.
The equipment that we've already paid for.
The equipment that we've already paid for, yes. At least the installation of. But you have to pay for that equipment. But then you are free to buy electricity from whoever you like, because now you're forced to pay Pepco whatever Pepco decides the rates are for the streetlights. And you're allowed to contract out or do for yourself the maintenance as a city. And currently we pay for every streetlight. Per streetlight, we pay a maintenance charge on top of the charge for electricity. And I think it's in the ballpark. Every year we pay in the $150,000 range, both for maintenance and electricity for our streetlights. And there's even been some suggestion by the legislator who really championed the legislation that this might actually save the city's money, because you could do things like choose to put in more efficient light bulbs. You can buy the electricity at a lower rate. So I think we should really look at that as a long-term solution, but in the short term, we really need to push and get the streetlights back on. I continue to encourage my residents, which they've already been doing, doggedly calling Pepco. I will continue to do so, and I ask the city manager to step up the calls to Pepco at the highest level of the company.
Anybody else? Okay. I don't have any additional agenda items or any agenda scheduling update. So the next item is the public comment period. If anybody has anything that they want to comment on that is not on our agenda or is on our agenda, everything.
Attention, two items that were left at your place at the dais. One is some additional supplemental information to agenda item 2, dealing with the Piney Branch pool. And also we had received a request from a member of the council asking for a map showing the essentially the police beats. So there was a map prepared by the police department that was left for each of you. Earlier, under council comments, Councilmember Clay had made reference to the corner lot at Ethan Allen and Jackson, and I know that there were several council members who received emails about this earlier today. There's actually kind of several different issues kind of related to that. I think, as I had previously advised at least some members of the council via email, there was some difficulty in determining the ownership of that lot. It does not actually have a street address. So we usually, when we're trying to determine ownership, you look at the State Department, the state assessment and taxation records, and unfortunately, that's all keyed off of addresses. A member of the police department staff did respond to a call there fairly recently and was talking to someone, so we may have a better lead in terms of who the owner or the responsible party is, and the chief has indicated that he will follow up with that officer when he returns to duty. The two different issues that we've heard about, one has to do with what I just heard of today for the first time, some possible rat infestation. That is actually a matter that gets referred to the county. They do have a staff member, and health-related issues fall under the county's jurisdiction, so that matter has been referred to Montgomery County for follow-up. The other matter is also under the county's jurisdiction, and there's been at least an allegation that they are running some type of commercial parking lot on a residential lot. Sarah Daines, our Director of Housing and Community Development, has also referred that possible zoning violation to the county. As those matters move forward, I'll keep the council apprised of what we're hearing. One thing I did just want to note is that we, as a staff, we cannot issue a citation for something that we don't actually see or we don't have any evidence of. And obviously we try to get around, but there's a lot of code enforcement matters. I would ask that if the council is contacted by any constituent, I think the suggestion has been made before, but it would be very helpful if there's actually, it has to be a digital photograph that basically is date and time stamped, and it actually has to show a violation. I know some of the photographs I got today I reviewed with Ms. Daines, and they probably are not sufficient evidence that even with any kind of affidavit that we could use to pursue any type of complaint, nor would the county be able to do that. So we'll continue to work with the county in terms of some of the zoning issues, because that does fall under their jurisdiction. If we're able to determine ownership, which I hope with the chief's assistant we'll be able to do soon, the matter of any type of dumping or rubbish is something that would fall under the city's jurisdiction.
So just a digital photo that's date and time stamped, or is there any they have to show the whole lot or the visible street sign, anything else? Just
Here's what Ms. Daines had indicated, has to have date and time stamped, which clearly documents a violation, and the individual would have to sign an affidavit. I think if there's any residents in particular that, I know I saw a few of the names that were copied, I know some of the individuals, we can follow up with them directly. But obviously, just having vehicles parked there may be related to the construction going on next door. It really is a matter of whether it's rising to the level of actually almost an illegal parking lot.
right. Yeah, the vehicles that are parked there are those car trailer vehicles that can carry several cars for the most part. There have been ones that have been clearly related to the construction, and they pull right up next to the house, and they have trucks.
Right.
But then the other folks that are like the big cargo trucks park out on the outer edge, and then the flea market people obviously aren't related to the
Right.
construction.
Clearly, if they're running some type of, vehicle sale operation off the lot, that would be a violation.
One of the guys that sent you an email today, I think, lives practically across the street, so we'll enlist his assistance.
Okay, and I actually know that individual, so I can touch base with him directly. The other thing I just wanted to mention, I'd share this with Councilmember Clay as we came in. I know she has expressed concern on a number of occasions about those violating the traffic flow at the Elm Lincoln traffic circle. Chief and I had talked about this some time ago. He has made it a directive to his staff to periodically do enforcement in that area. He's given me some counts, Councilmember Clay, of how many tickets have been issued, and I'll pull those off my computer tomorrow and share those with you. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Since you're talking about traffic enforcement, and the chief is here tonight, I just want to thank the chief for the enforcement today on Maple Avenue.
The next item on the agenda is an interview for the Arts and Humanities Commission. Stefan, and I don't want to mispronounce your last name. Yes, you can either stand there or you can sit at the table, whichever you prefer. Is it?
Hear me better.
Is it on? It is on? Okay. And how do you pronounce your last name?
Janin.
Janin?
No,
Okay.
in French we say Jana, but American people can't say that. So you can go on for Janin, that's fine. I'm getting
Good.
used to it.
Welcome. If you would like to just say a little bit about your interest in being on the Arts and Humanities Commission?
Well, I've been moving to USA and Takoma Park last year. My wife is American. I have a teaching background and also an artistic background, teaching art and media from more than 10, 12 years in France and overseas. I've always been very active in a community-based project in high schools in France and overseas when I was living in Asia. I used to manage also my own photo gallery for a few years and working with artists and photographers to develop cultural activities and cultural exhibitions. So I just arrived here last year, and I saw on the Takoma boards that there were some seats available in this commission, and it was quite interesting. First of all, it's an interest to see how it works on the inside and understand the place where I live. And then by the time, if I can get a good idea of how it works and who pulls the string and what can be done and who is the team, hopefully I would like to be able to contribute and help people in the commission to go on bringing new project here in terms of art, cultural, and specifically about photography because this is my heart.
Yeah, it was very interesting reading your resume. Looks like you have a lot of talents to bring to the city.
Well,
Anybody have any questions? I appreciate your interest to get involved in this, and we will be making appointments very soon.
all right.
And we appreciate your help.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you welcoming here, and it's great living in Takoma Park.
Good.
That's definitely the place where I wanted to be when I came here. Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
evening.
The next item is our regular meeting. This is the resolution urging Montgomery County to reopen Piney Branch Pool and fund necessary improvements. Would somebody like to move the resolution?
Move.
Moved by Councilmember Wright, seconded by Councilmember Snipper. Is there council discussion?
Additional items that Councilmember Wright submitted as possible modifications to the resolution.
Did you want to?
I would defer to others a little bit on this because I have less experience drafting resolutions and not sure exactly how prescriptive they should be. But basically, my suggestions were to be a little bit more specific in a few places. One was in the whereas associated with the pool area tour, that my understanding was that it wasn't only the equipment used to heat the pool, but that although the pool packs worked, they needed some maintenance, because I recall he's not a janitor, but the facilities person who took us around commenting on some of the problems with rust and paint having to do with the humidity not quite being dealt with correctly. And I wasn't sure if that was because the pool wasn't heated properly or if there was also some underlying issue with the pool packs in terms of their maintenance or them not always being on. So I think we should either double check that, or I think that was my understanding. And then it seemed to me that the other thing was there was some cosmetic painting that needed to be done inside the pool. So if we want to be more specific, we could include those things. If not, I'd be okay with passing it as is. And then just in terms of what I feel a little bit more strongly about the second one, about specifically what we're asking the county council to do. And I'm not sure that these words are the exact words, but that we would want to be very clear that we want them to make the capital improvements that would fully make the pool operational and work properly, that we would want them to also allocate the funds to run the pool effectively, and maybe even prescribe that the program, it should be appropriate aquatics activity. I can read the words, but since they're in front of everybody, I would probably not necessary. So.
If I can just comment on those, I think on the first one, my recollection of the interface of the pool packs and the boiler as to how that works in terms of conditioning the space and heating the pool water, my sense was that it was kind of all one system, and that I'm not sure that the terminology, that if we get into the terminology of the pool packs and kind of assign them only to the HVAC part of it, that we're technically correct, so that I would kind of like to not get too specific in that area. And on your second suggestion, the only thought I had was that we might not necessarily want to say that allocate capital funds for the part of it and operating funds for the other part of it, because knowing some of the history of how the county appropriates money, just as a for instance, I believe I'm correct that the money for the community center, which was for a capital project, was actually a grant from their operating budget.
That's true.
So that if we start to assume that they're going to pull money from their capital budget or their operating budget for something just because it makes sense, doesn't mean that's the way they're going to do it. So that I could see being more specific in your second suggestion if we just strike the words capital from the first further resolved and operating from the second one, then I think it gets specific without getting too specific. Councilmember Siemens?
I would agree with the Mayor, and but in the first suggestion, I'm not even sure if the original is general enough, because my recollection is that there was not only a problem with the equipment used to heat the pool, but also some problems with the equipment used to condition the air, that they were having humidity problems and things like that. So I would tend towards making it even a little bit more general, and saying, equipment used to heat the pool and maintain the proper
condition the space.
Yeah.
course, I agree with the mayor and council member Siemens that a little less specific is good here, because I think the main point is to get the county to take over the pool and to make these modifications, not get distracted by details which may turn out not to be quite right. I don't want them arguing about, well, it really wasn't the HVAC itself.
I agree with all those suggestions to modification.
Colin?
Yeah, I agree with the mayor's comments as well, and I would like to add one more. It's great that the MOU leads off the resolution. I'd like to make it more clear that the land that the school is sitting on was once city land. So maybe something like paragraph 4, providing for the transfer of land from the city of Tacoma Park to the county, or providing for a transfer from the city of Tacoma Park to the county of land at the intersection of Grant and Maple Avenues for a school with community facilities, including a public swimming pool.
If I might, the reason that I did not put that in there is that the land had previously just been transferred to us from Park and Planning, part of all of these discussions. It's okay to put that in there, but I don't want people to argue about that. So, in terms of, who really donated the land for the purpose, although certainly the most immediate action was from the city to the school district for this project. So I intentionally did not include that language when I did the drafting, but I can put it in.
Do you know when Park and Planning turned the land over to the city, was it for the intent of the school at that point, or were they giving us land?
I'm not sure,
they were releasing
but
land within the city boundaries?
The way that it looks like is that it was all part of the discussions about the school and kind of this community use. But I don't have the timeframes immediately.
But I believe Park and Planning transferred it, I want to say 5 years prior to the city transferring it to the county.
I'm sorry, I can't. I don't know the specifics well enough, so I'll defer to those.
I think it's worth putting in language that makes it clear that the city donated the land for a school facility that was to include, for a school that was to include community facility.
Okay, and Councilmember Clay, you had said, you were referring to the fourth line of
So the fourth line, providing for the transfer from the city of Tacoma Park to the county of land at the intersection of Grant and Maple Avenues for a school with community facilities, including a public swimming pool for the Tacoma Park East Silver Spring area. So basically, right after providing, to somehow in there link that to the city's transfer, and then immediately after, if we could link the location of it,
Yes,
and then come back to the statement about for a school for community facilities, including a public swimming pool.
Right, I see that.
Okay, so I think we've got the language on the first one, and then Councilmember Wright, did you want to say the pieces that you had suggested?
No, I didn't want to.
As modified by the rest of us?
Um,
And then we'll make all of these a friendly amendment?
Yeah, I don't know, do you want me to go back? Sorry, is there,
Just that we need the language.
yeah, Suzanne, do you have a good sense of the language that we wanted on the other ones? Or
I
no?
heard two different kinds of comments on the, if you go back to the first whereas clause that's referenced, to try to be less specific, I heard that that the council members found the pool to be in excellent condition, with the exception of the equipment used to heat the pool, and there was a question.
And condition the space.
And condition the space. Although that then takes out the which should be replaced, because that's not quite clear if that's what would you'd want. The one thing that I heard, that I thought of while you were discussing that, and I don't know if this is too general, is simply to take out the caveats, that you found the pool to be generally in excellent condition, and then just have the details of the maintenance requirements further down in the be it resolved clauses. I don't know if that's good enough or not.
Yeah, if you go that way, that whereas would end with pool to be in generally in excellent condition, colon, and then down in the expanded resolve clauses that Councilmember Wright's language has, strike capital from the first, strike operating from the second, and then make it that
And leave all the rest of the language there.
to perform all required improvements
To the pool and supporting equipment.
Yes.
Okay.
So we have those changes to the first
Let's see.
whereas and the first whereas at the top of the second page.
That's right. First whereas at the top of the
And then-
second page, and then the resolve
Then
clauses.
the resolve clauses. And those are all a friendly amendment to both the mover and the seconder? Okay, so that is now what we're discussing.
Okay. So if, the only thing I wanted to point out is in the first whereas is a separate issue, so how should, do we want to?
Go ahead.
Okay. It's just, I don't want to overstate what the MOU said about the public swimming pool, because I think I don't have it in front of me, but I think I remember when I read it, it actually specifies that there would be certain community facilities in the building, like a health clinic and that sort of stuff, but it's much more vague about a swimming pool. It maybe says
It talks
something
about a swimming pool is being proposed by the county.
like as a possibility or, right. So I just, I don't know if this maybe sort of overstates what the MOU is saying about including a swimming pool. Just want to be careful about that so they don't.
So that would strike the last phrase, starting with including public swimming pool.
You could take out including a public swimming pool, but you've got for a school with community facilities
Right.
in the
Right.
Tacoma Park East Silver
Right.
Spring area.
Yeah, I think that's more accurate, because there's no point in overstating something.
And the second whereas clause does say, as a result of that agreement, they operated the swimming pool.
Right, right. Okay. So again, friendly amendment. I know it's good for the mover and the seconder. Okay. Then I just have one question that I'm wondering if what I'd like to include maybe could go as part of a cover letter or a cover email or however we're sending this to the county council. What I would like to remind them of, and I don't know, the question came up as to whether we have this in writing yet or whether this is just common knowledge, that basically residents of the city of Tacoma Park pay the recreation tax to the county to the tune of over $300,000 a year, and the county has admitted that they don't provide any recreation services in the city. I'd like to somehow state that as accurately as possible as a reminder that if they're looking for funds from us to do this, that we've been providing those funds for years.
Yeah, I think the $300,000 figure was received from the county. I think it would be accurate to say that their rec department staff indicated in some other discussions that they do not actively program in this area. I do not think they said anything to the effect that they do nothing. So I think there's a subtle nuance in terms of what they're doing, but they do not actively program because we do have our own recreation department.
One of the other things I would like to caution is that this is a service that has been provided by the county for a long time, having the pool there. I would hesitate to have it all of a sudden be charged against us in some kind of a discussion. So, although we certainly recognize that taxpayers have been paying for recreation services twice and not receiving a full complement, I think how we word this is important.
Well, I was suggesting that I didn't think it needed to go in the resolution. Maybe I'll just suggest that we keep that as Plan B as the discussion progresses.
I would echo what Ms. Ludlow is saying. I think there's obviously the issue of the pool and the city's desire that the county continue to operate that as a resource not only for Tacoma Park, but also students residing outside the city and the community as a whole. I think if we're trying to tie it too strongly to the recreation tax, that could have unintended consequences relative to tax duplication payments, and I would suggest that that issue not be raised, whether it's in this resolution or even in a transmittal letter, because I think they're two separate issues.
Okay. So, I think we have our resolution. Is there public comment?
Andy Kellerman, Philadelphia Avenue. I am just wondering whether in the resolve section, if there couldn't be something a little more specific to Tacoma Park, where we say open to the public. I mean, I assume, yes, it's open to the public, but somehow or other to make a point that Tacoma Park has a special claim on it. Somehow emphasize that part. That's a comment. How could one put a couple of words in there to get that across?
I guess I like the language as it is, keeping it open to the public since it serves not only Tacoma Park, but other people as well.
Down County.
Is there any other public comment? Okay, then we'll vote on the resolution. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any noes? Any abstentions? The ayes have it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. Next item is Montgomery Housing Partnership is requesting a 5-year extension of the Edinburgh pilot.
Good evening. As noted by the mayor, the council is being asked to consider an extension of an existing pilot, a payment in lieu of taxes for the Edinburgh House. It's a 45-unit property that is owned by MHP just up the road from here a little bit. This particular property has had a pilot on it since 1995. It was extended for a 5-year period back in 2005, and they are asking that it be extended for another 5 years in support of a low-income housing tax credit application that they are hoping to submit in April. If you were to approve the extension of the pilot, that would be contingent upon them receiving the low-income housing tax credits. I had hoped that they would be here tonight, but obviously something has come up. What they're looking at doing with the low-income housing tax credits are to make the property basically more energy efficient, make improvements to the heating and ventilation system, and to try to address their high water consumption figures. They are looking at keeping the same terms of the original pilot, which were that 50% of the units occupied by new residents after August 1st, 2005 be occupied by households with incomes at 80% or lower of the area median income. The reason for that is that the conditions are a little different than we have with other pilots, primarily because when the initial pilot was entered into, MHP made a commitment to the existing tenants at that time that their rents would not increase due to any capital improvements that were financed in part by the pilot that was approved in 1995. At the time that this pilot was extended, 25 of the original 45 tenants that were in the building were still in the building. I don't know if those numbers are the same this year, but they've had very low turnover at that particular property. I've included as an attachment not only a copy of the request that was submitted by David Wilson of MHP, but also a copy of the ordinance that authorized the initial 5-year extension of the pilot. And then on the very back of your agenda packet is one of my infamous matrices regarding all of the active pilot agreements that we have right now. This includes everything with the exception of a pilot that was approved for CPDC to finance the project over at Hampshire Power. And if you'll note that of the 6 pilots that are currently active, they're all in partnership with MHP, and that their total cumulative value on an annual basis is about $28,000 per year. So of the $37,000 that you would typically expect to be generated in local property taxes for properties on this list, all but $9,000 is forgiven to help offset the operating costs associated with that property and to reduce the rents, etc.
Councilmember Snow.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm sorry MHP isn't here. I have a couple of concerns. One is I note that 80% of median income in Montgomery County is about $80,000. And if my arithmetic is correct, that means that 30% of that, here we go, I can ask.
I'd like to introduce it. I was hoping you were showing up. I'd like to introduce David Wilson. He is with MHP and can probably answer your question regarding income limits of the property tied to the low-income housing tax credit.
There are 2 approaches under the statute. It's either 40% under 60% of AMI, or, I'm sorry, I've got that, 60%, 60% or less, or if 40% for 40% of AMI. That may not be right. I will correct that.
Well, I guess my, I'll give you a chance to collect the question and finish my question. It seems to me that using the 80% figure doesn't qualify as what I would call moderate income in Tacoma Park. Because in Montgomery County, 80% of income is $80,000. And HUD uses a 30% rule for, that's the amount of, maximum amount of your income you should pay in rent. It comes to $24,000, as I figure it, which is $2,000 a month. And $2,000 a month is considerably higher than the average rents in Montgomery County, as we've heard before several times, and certainly substantially higher than rents under rent control in Tacoma Park. So to me, the 80% of median income, while it might work on a national basis, in which the national median income, I guess, is what, 40,000, it's not really, doesn't really characterize moderate income in Montgomery County. So If you could comment a bit on that, I'd appreciate it.
Just also to give you some additional information, before you came in, we were talking about the extension of the existing pilot, and one of the conditions of the existing pilot is that 50% of the units that are occupied after August 1st are filled by persons with no more than 80% of the median.
Let me make two comments on that. One is that I would agree with you. 80 to 120 or 80 to 140 is considered workforce housing, and we would expect that our residents currently, to the extent that we know, because we don't have data for those folks who didn't voluntarily recertify because of the agreement between us and the city.
This is a stage presentation.
Well, it was that. Let me just have a moment. Question. A break for a commercial. Here's a question. 80%.
Other than that, what is the area median income for?
For a family of 4, it is about 95,000.
Not according to the COG figures. It's over 100,000.
Yeah,
well, but it's all on the same ballpark.
It is.
It's high.
Yeah, it's over mine, so it's in the same boat.
What we're planning on doing with this property, contingent upon getting the tax credits, is restricting most of the units to 50 or 60% of area median income, which for a family of 4 is about 60% is about 56,000, at least under the last. I haven't seen the brand new numbers from HUD yet. So 80% is probably in the 70s, I guess, mid-70s for a family of 4.
Well, one of the things that I'd like to point out, and I've noted in the memo, is that this property is also exempt from rent stabilization because of an agreement that it has with the county, I believe, regarding financing. And a condition of that exemption is that the incomes of a majority of the people, and I don't have it in front of me right now, are at 60% of the median or lower. Why the 80% figure is in there, I believe it was included in the original pilot that was entered into with the city and MHP back in 1985. And at that point in time, the incomes may have been more appropriate from an affordability standpoint.
Well, certainly some years have passed since 1995.
Yes.
And incomes have, at least area median incomes have increased substantially. I don't know whether renters' incomes have increased as much. And that's essentially my concern. It does seem like using the HUD guideline of 30% of income, meaning about $2,000 a month for rent, is that's a really substantial rent, much higher than average rents in Montgomery County. So I was wondering if you would consider lowering that 80% standard to 60%.
I know right now, and I know some council members may have heard of Councilman Siemens, there's been a resistance in the past to income certification at this building particularly. Now, we think that the vast majority of people are at 60% or less. If we had to covenant to 80%, a lot of people might, if we had to covenant to 60%, a lot of people might leave, and we feel uncomfortable doing that. We don't want to displace anybody. So, and that's why in our tax credit application, I think we have 9 units at unrestricted rents, which means that there won't be any income restrictions on those units, and that's about the maximum we think we could get. If we were to go to 100% and 60%, probably some people would be displaced.
No, I wasn't suggesting 100%, that's 60%.
Can I just go back to something you said a minute ago, Sarah, about what's in the, I don't know, agreement where the building is exempt from rent control because of the terms of the financing. If the terms of the financing could be reflected in the pilot?
We can do that quite easily, and that's already an agreement that you have entered into with the county. So we can go back and talk to MHP and work out the specifics in terms of the percentage of units that fall within certain percentages of the AMI, recognizing that the agreement that MHP entered into with the tenants at the time that they purchased the property back in the mid-1990s has created some unique situation in terms of not everyone reports their income. So we could structure it so very similar to last time it was extended, where the income limits would apply to those people that moved in after that date that was identified in the agreement from 2005. So we can work out those details and bring them back to you, presuming we get to the first reading.
So that agreement was only for tenants that were in place at the time. Any new tenants would have to abide by the income certification.
Correct.
Yeah, that's what I was after, new tenants, not the existing tenants. The second thing I wanted to ask about concerned the income verification issue in general. And that had to do with, as you've indicated, you do not currently ask for income of the tenants. Is that correct?
Not for the new, not for older tenants.
Not for older tenants.
For the newer tenants.
With the newer tenants, you would.
Right.
Would you be? The concern I have is if you are talking about, I believe it's half the units. I think that's right.
I just pulled out my figures, by the way.
Half the units to be below whatever the cutoff is that we work out. Do you then require income information for all the tenants, or do you set aside new units to be low-income units, and those you do require income information? How do you actually implement that 50% kind of concept?
We've had an interesting experience with Tacoma Park Preservation, and essentially we get those people who will cooperate and list their incomes, and the people who won't, we either give them exception or tell them to move. So oftentimes...
But this would apply to new folks?
Oh, for new folks, yeah, everybody would come in. Anybody new that would come in would have to income certify. If they didn't, they wouldn't be allowed to live there. And they would have to do that annually.
Well, that's the question. Even if they aren't sort of applying for the income cutoff units. I mean, what I don't understand is you have half of your units fall under whatever guideline we come up with, and half don't.
Right.
So the question is, why would you require income information for everybody if only half of them are going to fit into these?
Well, under our tax credit application, 71% of the units actually are going to be at 50 and 60% of area median income. The other 29% are going to be unrestricted. So what we would, and we essentially charge the same rent for people who do not income verify as we do for those who do income verify. We don't discriminate between those folks. So the people that have been there for years, even though they may make $150,000 a year, they're still paying the same as the new person who came in.
I understand the existing tenants. I'm trying to get clarity on the new tenants. We seem to be drifting into the existing tenants. I'm talking about the new tenants.
So essentially, you do an income verification of everyone as part of the application process for new tenants?
Right, yeah. Everybody.
But then you charge them the same rent, whatever their income?
Right. If you're not restricting it by rent, you're restricting it by income.
By income. Okay. I got it.
I'm sorry.
I didn't understand how that worked.
There would be an exception to that if they matched project-based Section 8 or if the person came in with a voucher.
That's, thank you. I was trying to figure out how that worked. Do you subcontract the management of this unit, of this building out?
Yes, to equity management. Yeah, we don't self-manage.
Right.
Not yet.
I've heard some complaints about these management groups in some of the MHP units. And the subcontracting out often creates an accountability problem. That is, it's difficult there's an extra step, if you will, between the tenants and you as owners, because it goes through this management organization. And so it's difficult, I think, to ensure that the management is operating under your guidelines. For example, the protection of income information comes up. We were just talking about that. Or responding to complaints about entry without notice and so on. There isn't a solution to this other than have you guys manage the thing, which I don't actually suggest, because that would be a huge discussion. But I do think...
And you still have the same problems,
I think. Yes, but the accountability is more direct. Because, for example, I can't complain to you about something your contractor does. I have to complain to the contractor.
Well, no, actually you can. And, if Rob Goldman were here, and he can't because there's a board meeting, every time we meet with the tenants, he gives out his direct dial phone number, and he said, if you have a problem that is not getting resolved by management, call me directly. And he gives his phone number out every time. And some people take him up on that.
Yeah.
They take that very seriously. And if there's and that has happened several times, and we've gotten to the heart of the problem and resolved it.
Well,
and I give out my phone number.
I'm glad to
too.
hear that. Okay, those are my questions.
Good. Did you, Colleen, and then Terry?
So my first question is actually for you, sir. Thank you for the spreadsheet. But I noticed that the average annual pilot that we've got, there are a lot of averages, and that the structure of the city's pilot programs are frequently that it's 100% for some period of time and then 50% afterwards. Would you say that currently the annual tax loss to the city is greater than the 28,000 or less than, or what kind of a period are we in now?
A majority of the pilots that have been entered into since, majority of the pilots that are listed here are the phased pilots that Colleen is talking about, in terms of where it's 100% of the local property taxes forgiven for the first 5 years, then it drops down to 75% for 3 years, and then 50% for 2 years. So at this point in time, it would be higher than the 28. These are averages based on the various lengths of the pilots and wherever we are in the
It's not likely to be more than double, so we wouldn't, it's not more than 50,000 a year right now, right?
No.
Okay. It'd be interesting to see what the structure of that looks like, so we can kind of see what years we have more capacity.
We can do that easily.
So my second question is, it's still possible that our New Hampshire Towers Tacoma Overlook site could come online, and here, at a bargain deal, we get essentially 157 units for something around $30,000. When we add the Tacoma Overlook, we'll add 220 units to that. Is the cost going to be significantly more than, I think, what was it, $37,000 a year? Does that sound about right?
There, the average was about $61,000, assuming that they had made the investment they had spoken to the council about.
So we'd go from 30 up to just under 100,000 when they come online? in terms of our
105.
commitment in exchange for 380 units or so
Another, yes.
altogether? Okay.
Another way to look at it too is on a per unit basis, which is the very last column
Right.
there. Frankly, the current pilot that you have with MHP has the least financial impact on the city. It's the only one that's just set at 50% of the local property taxes. The others, again, are phased in over time.
So when this was originally executed, it says 1995 here, but did you say that this had started in 1985? Did I hear you say that?
The initial pilot was in 1995 for a 10-year period. It was extended in 2005 for a 5-year period by the council, and they're asking to extend that, add another 5 years on the end.
Okay. What's the period under which the property is currently under contract under the low-income housing tax credit contract? Because usually those don't run for 10 years. How long is this property currently required to provide 50% of its housing at 80% of the rate?
It's either, this is a wide range, it's either 24 or 40 years. It's
Right.
very long.
If it started in 1985, it's probably 24 years. When does this property come out from under its current low-income housing tax credit requirements?
Well, right now, actually, there aren't any tax
It's
credit
with the-
requirements. It's with the county.
It's the county's
There's a county loan.
financed it.
So when does the property currently come out from under the regulation
Those are usually-
as it relates to its county financing?
I'd have to get back to you on that one.
The county,
Those are often 40 years.
and I've got that information upstairs, unfortunately. The county agreements, because it's through their housing trust program or their loan programs, typically they do a 40-year period. So assuming that the note was entered into in 1995 when the MHP purchased the property, it would be 40 years out. So we're looking at 20, 30 years.
Okay, so there's 20 or 30 years still left on the contract under which they would continue to be required to provide at least 50% at 80% of the area median income. So I don't see it in here, but I heard you say, or maybe I just didn't read far enough, I heard you say the new pilot looks for a different mix of housing. I heard you talking about 60% of area median income. I think it would be really useful to know exactly what it is you're talking about, because otherwise there's no incentive for the city to provide any additional support or funding, because we already provided funding under the agreement that you were going to provide 50% of the units at 80% of the area median income, it sounds like, until 2030. So my question would be, why would I give you more money? Not that I object, because I think it's a small amount of money, and I'm hoping that you have a good answer to that, but what is the answer to that question?
Well, that's a good question, because, and of course, we're asking for this pilot contingent upon receiving the tax credit awards. If we were to receive the tax credit awards, 71% of the units will be at 50 and 60%, and I'll give you the breakdowns between those.
71% of the units will be at 50 to 60%.
60%.
So that's
For
low income.
41 years.
For 41 years from this date.
Yes, from this date, from the date of allocation, which would probably be later this year. So, and actually 41 plus. You have to, so it would be a minimum of 41 years from this date. And specifically, it would be 16 units at 50% and 16 units at 60%.
16 at 50 and 16 at 50, okay.
The remaining 13 units would be unrestricted.
And now that's because those people won't do an income verification for you right now.
Yeah.
And if you were provided an income verification that showed that they were at, say, 80% of the area median income, or 80 to 120, you could actually lock those units now and get more tax credit dollars, is that correct?
Tax credits only work at 60% or
They only
more.
work at 60%, okay.
We would love it if everybody would open their records up and income certified, because the more people that certify, and if we could say that this would be 90% affordable, we would get more tax credits for it. But there's been such an opposition to people opening up their financial records of this property that we decided not to open open that Pandora's box. So many people have been there for so long. I think they all qualify, to tell you the truth, or most people do, but there is a reluctance of some people to open up their financial records, despite all the safety requirements that the management companies impose, as you well know.
Yeah, I've seen some of those letters.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that,
we would have no problem covenanting to that, contingent upon the tax credit award, because we are not going to covenant to these income restrictions unless we can get the tax credits, because the numbers don't work otherwise, unfortunately.
right, so it was the city's initial policy that the folks who live in that not be, see what that matters to them, and
They like to see as much of the local government putting in what they can as possible, so that they want to leverage their resources as much as possible. That's their justification. And they have a very complicated point system that goes through all of this. And
I just want to make sure I understand this right. Would it be fair, would it be accurate to say that the people who have lived there a long time, who don't want to income verify, basically don't have any incentive to, because they continue to get, no matter their income, the benefits of the lower rents because of the various agreements that are in place?
probably so. However, if they would, and we could get a higher percentage income verifying, there would be more money available to the project and we could do more of a job. It really would benefit them, but trying to convince people of that is sometimes difficult. Nevertheless, we also love to keep these tenants that have been around for 15 or 20 years because we find they're most stable tenants. They pay their rents on time. We always use their apartments as showpieces, for inspectors because they keep them up very well. So we don't want to displace them. I wish I could convince them that it would be in their interest, but it's hard to do that.
I hear you. I just somehow it doesn't seem right that they don't have to do what everybody else has to do, but they get the benefits.
While maintaining their privacy.
Go ahead.
On that same point, you said that they do receive the lower rent then. So how are they counted when you present that? Are they presented as affordable housing units below that threshold? Or?
No, they're just presented to the state as unrestricted units.
As unrestricted.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's why if you did have the information, you would then report them as affordable units.
Yeah, and we could get a higher percentage of what's called eligible basis, which gives you more tax credit equity, gives you more free money essentially. So it reduces your debt overall so that you can charge lower rents.
And to count them as affordable, you have to have their income level.
So if they're counted as unrestricted units, do they pay unrestricted rents?
We generally try to keep the rents about the same for tenants who have been in there for a long time. Now, however, should that person leave that unit, we may charge a little bit more. But if somebody's been in there for years and years, we're not going to bump their rent up just because we can. That's just not our policy.
Could you talk a little bit about the rents? I mean, what are the typical rents for folks who've been there for a long time, or just give us an idea of what the rents are?
I think the current rent structure now is about, and this is all utilities included, and I'm not exactly certain of this, but I think it's $900 a month for a one-bedroom and $1,000 for a two-bedroom, and that includes all utilities in the rent. So actually, the rents that we're planning to charge
give us all a turn.
Are going to be a little bit less than that, including the new utilities that they would pay. So,
Councilmember Wright gets 2 minutes, and Councilmember Siemens gets 1.
We'll see.
Go ahead.
Well, first, I'd just say thank you for the work you're doing in Tacoma Park to help provide affordable housing. The second is just I had a question about, for the pilot we give, how much money are you getting both in tax credits, and then how much are you getting in actual dollars in the door? Because you take those tax credits and then sell them for some, probably 60 to 70 cents on the dollar, right? So I asked this question because I'm wondering sort of what we put in, how much leverage that provides, or how much more the community gets back as a result of that.
The current numbers that I have, we're looking at equity. I've calculated at 90 cents to the dollar of about $2.5 million, and that MHP is putting in about $250,000, and probably a private loan in the amount of about $2 million. So those are the, and then we're going to be, once we calculate a lot of the numbers, we're still working on the numbers, we're probably going to go back to the county and ask for a certain amount from them. That number I can't give you today because we're still working on some of the operating expense numbers and the construction numbers.
But specifically, we're cumulative value on the pilot's about $18,000, and you're getting back, because the tax credits are the things that are connected to the pilot. You're getting back $2.5 million. That's a pretty impressive.
And that's based on 70% of the project affordable.
It's a very good bargain for us. Thank you.
Councilmember Siemens.
Thank you. In deference to the mayor's request that I keep this short, I'll be blunt and be short. We don't have the information, the detailed information in this document for us to make proper decisions, and you don't seem to have it at your fingertips. I'm impressed with Councilmember Clay's ability to juggle these numbers on the fly. I'm not able to do that, so I would appreciate getting all that information together in the next document that we get with the different income levels of what we are now and where your target is, what you want to be, so we're able to, so I'm able to assess that better. And I understand a couple months ago you had a meeting with the tenants to talk to them about the pending potential renovation. At that time you were thinking you were possibly going to get the loan, and that didn't follow through, but at that time you did tell the tenants that they were going to have to find other housing, and that they would be displaced until the renovations were done, and then they could move back in. Is that accurate?
Let's see, back in August we talked to them before we applied for tax credits, and we said that during renovation we would probably take certain tiers and vacate them, and we would move people at our expense to other MHP units, renovate that tier of units, then move them back at our expense.
There seemed to be an impression that when you move them back there would have to be a certification and adjustments in rents at that time.
Correct. Anybody that's moving back under the tax credit program would have to certify. If we already certified somebody that they don't have to covenant the new tax credits, they don't have to do that. They don't have to certify to their incomes when they move back. And rent levels would be adjusted. We're still working on that. Right now the property pays for all utilities.
So all the people who aren't certified now would be certified at that time when they move back in?
Probably, so yes, they would have to.
We got two shakes no and one yes.
I was going to
Steve, haven't certified before.
Yeah, anybody who's coming back in as a market rate tenant would not certify. Anybody who's coming back as a tax credit tenant would have to certify. So that's what I meant to say.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Now you've gotten us more.
No.
What happens to the?
If it's certified now, they'll recertify. If they haven't, they won't.
Did my minute stop while you were talking about this?
No.
Right.
So the existing tenants who are currently grandfathered would no longer be grandfathered?
Yes, they would.
They would continue to be grandfathered.
They would continue to be grandfathered.
Okay. I know there's been a lot of discussion that I've received from your tenants about maintenance concerns, management concerns, and also concerns about the what's going on with the potential for having to move during the renovation and that. And I would just suggest that as we go forward with this, we should have a short public hearing to give any tenants the opportunity to speak on this subject before we consider moving ahead with it. I don't expect we're going to get hundreds of people showing up, but I think it's fair to let tenants participate in the process.
We had a meeting about a month ago with the tenants at the University in Houston, just to see how everything was going, and the overall response there. Actually, that meeting went very, very well. They were very pleased with the whole process so far, as much as can be. It's a complicated process when you have to move people out and back in to a new building.
Complicated is part of it, and disruptive is another part of it. And I think it's important that the people get an opportunity to participate in the process that's affecting their lives to such a great extent.
Right. And before we move people, we have a lot of meetings with the tenants to tell them about what's happening and keeping them up to date. We have translators there; they need it. So, at least in the first building, University, there haven't been any problems at all. Minimal.
And if I can suggest that it sounds like that's the way to proceed and get the information necessary and get the feedback from the tenants, and I'm not sure doing that here will be terribly productive. So my inclination,
is that something that
my inclination would be not to have a public hearing on this.
Could we then ask the housing department to organize a meeting of the tenants to discuss this?
We can work with MHP and the management firms to do that.
Thank you.
People are also always welcome to come. There'll be public comment period during the passing of the ordinance. So,
depending upon the outcome of this depending upon the outcome of the direction of the council tonight, we have tentatively scheduled this for first reading next Monday night. Given the short week, it's very unlikely that we would be able to do that before the first reading is scheduled. To hold a meeting with the tenants between now and Monday might be problematic.
So having a public hearing at next week's council meeting before we hear this again might be the better way.
That's a decision that the council has.
Would there be a difficulty in having first reading not next week but in 3 weeks?
What's your timing on next week?
The tax credit application is due April 1st. As long as we get some kind of a letter before that.
Yes, that would work.
What would be 3 weeks date? What would that be? March 11th or so? I think that would work.
Right, 11th.
So yes, we would have it completely done and to you before April 1.
Okay. Actually, the 10th, because we'd be back on the Monday.
By completely done, you mean both the first and second?
Because then it would be the 10th and the 24th. Everybody okay with that? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next agenda item, update from the Tree Commission.
As an aside, I just wanted to mention we got a letter from Karen Fishman today saying that her property, Maple Towers, is for sale again. She's accepting offers at an astronomical price. We've been talking to her about a property in Gaithersburg, and so she's throwing this one in too. And we'll continue talking with her.
For those of you unfamiliar with that name, this is a property that is on the corner of
7610 Maple.
Avenue.
That's what I figured.
What in Maple?
It's been vacant for a little while.
Ritchie and Maple Avenue. It was more or less vacated by the fire department. Well, that started the whole thing, but it's been vacant for quite a number of years. There's been a great deal of interest in purchasing and renovating the property, but it's been problematic to come to some conclusions with the property.
There haven't been any agreement on the price.
Why don't we condemn it?
So welcome to all of you.
Yes, well, I just wanted to, first of all, thank you very much for inviting us to give this report. This is actually a first for us. We've never done this before.
We're hoping that this is the first of a number.
Oh, okay.
We're inviting all of the council-appointed committees and commissions to come back and brief us on how things are going, and we're hoping that that'll lead to a little bit better understanding of what you all are doing and better understanding, when necessary, on the part of committees and commissions, what the council might think you should be doing.
Well, that sounds excellent. They're definitely going in the right direction. Well, first I wanted to introduce the members. I'm Carol Hodden, and this is Pat Howell. We're co-chairs. And this is Melanie Posnot. And this is Nicolene Van Schalen, our newest member. And I guess I just wanted to start out by just very briefly outlining what we actually do, what our mission is. And as you know, the City of Tacoma Park has created a chapter of the code, Chapter 12, regulating vegetation and trees, and because it recognizes the environmental and economic and aesthetic value of trees in the urban environment. And as part of this, it's created the Tree Commission, which is normally composed of 5 members. And our role is set out in Chapter 2, stating the Tree Commission, with the assistance of the arborist, shall propose rules, regulations, procedures, and actions to be taken by the city to preserve and protect the urban forests, subject to the approval of the council, and perform any other related duties assigned by the council. And as we see it, really our mission is twofold. The first is what I'm calling juridical or adjudicating, because the Chapter 12 of the code regulates the removal or pruning or disturbance of urban trees on private property through the issuance of tree permits, tree removal permits, or waivers by the city arborist. And as part of this process, the code requires a 15-day posting period of any tree or tree that will be affected, whether by pruning or disturbance or by removal. And this gives any citizen, any resident, an opportunity to object. And also a claimant for a tree removal that's been denied also has a right to request a hearing. And when this happens, the Tree Commission meets along with the city arborist and city attorney, as well as any interested party. Any member of the public is allowed to show up. And basically, we hear testimony and decide whether the tree permit has been correctly approved or denied, using both criteria that is actually explicitly set out in the Chapter 12 of the code, and as well as any testimony that might be given in the process of the hearing. And then the Tree Commission renders a decision and informs the plaintiff or the claimants of their decision. And if the claimant is not, or the plaintiff, I should say, is not happy with our decision, they can actually go ahead and appeal it in county court. And I think that one of the most valuable parts of our role is simply providing a venue that allows people to get together, be part of the process, feel that they're actually participating in something that actually affects their economic and environmental well-being. And I found that these hearings can actually be educational. They can cause citizens to, people who want to remove a tree, decide that they don't have to. It's allowed people who have started out in kind of an adversarial situation to actually come together and work out some sort of compromise. Neighbors arguing over how trees that affect both properties or on both properties, how they should be treated. So I think it's actually a very valuable process that goes beyond just the strictly sort of the juridical aspects of it. And the second part of our role, I think, is advisory, which is set out explicitly in Chapter 2. So basically, we advise the city council on issues that arise. And for example, we were really heavily involved in the recodification that took place in 2003 and 2004 in rewriting the Chapter 12. And we were basing our advice specifically on issues that had come up over the years. So I think we were able to substantially improve the new code. So I don't know if there are any questions regarding our role there.
I just wanted to get a sense from you how you, especially those of you who have been on the commission for a while, how the process is functioning, if it's working better than it used to, if changes to the law have solved any problems that have come up, and how you're doing in terms of time frame of turnaround of any opinions.
I think that I think that I don't know whether the recodification has made a difference. It's a little hard to determine that, but I do know that we have not had as many hearings in the last couple of years. Which I see as a positive thing. I hope anyway. But I think it's a little bit difficult to say whether that's directly related to the law. I don't know. Do you have a feeling to that, Pat?
Yes and no. We do have fewer hearings, and we will be getting the stats from the arborist in a week or so. And I think that it's because the ordinance is a little easier to understand. I think we all have to agree in its entirety, it's a very substantial document. A lot of formal language, and it's hard to get through the whole thing and know where you are. Nonetheless, I do think that people, residents, homeowners particularly, are beginning to understand the necessity for not only applying, but thinking about the whole process of what it is that they are planning to do on their property in terms of trees. And so I think we're seeing the results of the good news of this being a little bit easier to read.
Yeah, I think the city arborist has really made an attempt to educate people about the existence and the details of the city ordinance. So I think has had a positive effect as well.
And as you've had hearings, having the attorney help has made turnaround good?
I would say so, yeah. I don't know whether it's faster than it was, but it's definitely not slower, and he's extremely helpful in guiding us in how we should approach matters.
We promise to the parties that we will get back to them within 30 days. We do.
Yeah, that's kind of standard. I mean, that hasn't really changed.
No.
Okay.
And nobody's objected to that.
Not
that we're aware of. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. So just as far as our activities over the last year, and I don't know if that's what you had in mind, but I mean that's something I thought I could go over. As Pat mentioned, the details of the numbers of permits and waivers and such like will be presented by the city arborist at a later time. But we had just one hearing last year, which was good, I think. And with regards to our advisory function, we did recommend a change to the code that arose directly from a case that what we heard in 2006. And in that case, we reversed a denial of a permit to remove a tree by the city arborist. And that was actually during the time of transition from one arborist to another. And there was some confusion over, I think there was some confusion in our mind over who was actually responsible for allowing the permit to be denied, or what the basis was for denying it. But in any case, we did overrule the city arborist in that instance. However, once we'd done that, we realized that there was no requirement for a 15-day posting of the tree that was to be removed for anybody, any citizen to raise an objection. And so we recommended that to the city council that this be changed, that in such instances a posting be made for the regular 15-day period, and this was approved in Ordinance 2007-59, which I think is part of your package. So that was a contribution that we made. And Melanie Fosnett participated in the annual Arbor Day observance and free tree giveaway, which is held every year. And we generally try to have at least one member of the tree commission at the Arbor Day observance. And we also had 2 resignations from the tree commission. One was Patrick Campbell, who resigned because he had moved out of the city. And the other one was Cynthia Szymanski, who left for personal reasons, but not related to any problems with the tree commission. And I suppose I should mention that we also have a 4th member now who just was disappointed, Dick Lee.
And we thank you.
And yes, we thank you very much for appointing her. We very much appreciate it. And we're currently actively seeking a 5th member to fill our roster. And if anyone knows of any possible candidates, we'd love to hear from any of you. We're out there beating the bushes. So far, we haven't been able to twist any arms. But anyway, as far as...
While you're beating the bushes,
yes.
Have you knocked off any limbs?
No.
We can't discuss that.
We wouldn't dream of doing that. So we don't anticipate, we don't know of any upcoming hearings. It's something that the city arborist will address. And we don't anticipate changes to the ordinance, but who knows what might come up in the hearing. And we hope to have at least 2 members participating in the Arbor Day observance this year, April 19th. And we're also have been knocking around some ideas as far as assisting the city arborist in getting out the word to residents about the tree ordinance. And one of the ideas we thought of, we haven't really gotten very far with, is actually creating a video spot on for the city cable access station, just informing people of the existence of it and just giving people maybe a short outline of what's involved. And we're also thinking about, maybe Melanie can talk about this a little more detail, we're also thinking about proposing a city champion tree contest, which is modeled after state and county champion tree programs, possibly something that will present in schools.
Yeah.
But anyway, you might want to talk about that a little more.
It's an idea we've batted back and forth. It's not a fully realized plan, but probably some of you are familiar with the Champion Tree Program that the state or the county runs. Anyone? Basically, what people do is individuals nominate trees, and it's really, Champion Tree is usually based on size. Champion trees in Maryland can be any species in the state of Maryland. I wouldn't propose that for a local contest. I would say 2 or 3 species.
Yeah.
Or something easy that children can identify. You know, a some of our really, the gems that we have out there, the beeches, sycamores, white oak is a state tree. And it really would be where we would ask residents to go out and take a look at their trees, their neighbors' trees, and nominate some champions. And then we would volunteer the arborist to judge. And they would send us, we would teach them how to take some measurements and things, and then they could nominate some, and maybe by Arbor Day, probably not this year, but by next year, we could announce a champion and publicize it. It would just be a way of getting not only school kids, but residents in general enthusiastic about the trees that they've got. And, you know, one person learns how to identify a tree, gets excited, and you have a budding arborist, and you have someone who's going to go on in Tacoma Park maybe to promote trees further.
Yeah, I think it's something that we could maybe put together for this Arbor Day, is just to present it, to announce it.
Launch it, and then give people some time to identify and nominate.
Yeah, sounds like a good idea. Are there any questions?
Maybe you said it and I missed it, but I think that I know I'm interested in the health of our canopy, and I'm sure that you're more aware than I am about that health, and in conjunction with the city arborist, that'd be something I'd enjoy hearing when you come before us.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us in general and specifically what measures are being taken to preserve that health, and so it seems like the champion tree competition or whatever, or identification would be a part of that, but it doesn't quite, in my mind, reach to the broader health of the canopy. I don't know if you have any comments on that.
Well, that's, that's really something that the city arborist deals with, and he, as I understand it, he is supposed to present a report, I don't know, next week. Really,
I guess
my feeling is that that's kind of his function, but
all right, well,
I'm willing to.
Well, maybe we'll hear a little bit about that right now, Todd, but I guess what I'm also looking for is the relationship between you and the Tree Commission, and how they'll do outreach to inform the public about the health of our canopy, and what your relationship is or will or might be. That's what I'm after.
Historically, it's been a hearing board to determine whether the arborist's judgment was correct in issuing or not issuing a permit for protection or removal, with, as far as I can find in the record, very little activity as an advocacy organization for tree protection or preservation in the canopy, even though that is in their charter. And we've had a discussion at our last meeting about the intricacy and the complications that if they're advocating tree preservation in the canopy within the city, how can then there sort of be an adjudicatory board at the same time?
Is that clear? It took me a while to get the picture. So I wondered if there were questions.
I think I understand.
If they're promoting trees in the city, how can they be regulating trees in the city?
I guess it depends on how you phrase it. In a sense, if they're promoting the health of the canopy, and the arborist makes a decision, and they have to review that, it seems like the health of the canopy would still be the overriding element, whether or not the arborist happens to be right or wrong in their opinion at that particular point in time.
Their decision can be to remove a piece of the canopy.
Yes, in the interest of the health of the canopy in a greater context. I mean, it seems that we'd all. I can't imagine anyone saying, "Well, we don't really believe in the health of the canopy." I mean, I can't imagine that you would say that, or that the Tree Commission would say that.
No, but a citizen who wants to remove a tree,
yes,
and is denied a permit, is applying to remove the tree against the welfare of the canopy, so to speak, in that he's removing a viable part of the canopy for whatever reason is stated in the application. and they are affirming my denial, they're saying, no, the canopy is good, you don't get to remove it. And
Yeah, I understand.
there's conflict of interest.
Yeah, okay,
in
I
my
understand.
opinion.
In an adjudicative role, you met once last year, did I hear that correctly? And the year before?
We meet every month,
You meet once a month?
but we don't have a hearing.
Okay, so, well, do you feel that there's adequate outreach to inform the public? Do you feel that you do adequate outreach to inform the public about the aspects of the health of the canopy, or are you happy to rely in part on the tree commission to extend that
I would be
knowledge?
happy to rely on part, but I think we will need to discuss more the intricacies of how it can be done without making it.
Okay, so that sounds like that's something that we'll hear more about.
Right.
Is that right?
It sounds like it would be fair to say that as you assess your workload in terms of hearings, that you're looking for opportunities for outreach and education, and you'll discuss those among yourselves with the arborist and come up with the best way to do that, and we'll hear more about that.
The arborist is charged with informing, educating the citizens of Tacoma Park, and he does that. You'll probably read things in the newsletter voice, and then in speaking with people. And what we're suggesting, what Carol was suggesting that we might do would be something on the cable channel that talks about trees, talks about the need for an ordinance to protect them, and perhaps a mailing to every resident once a year or once every 2 years saying there is a city ordinance, a tree ordinance, and these are the primary elements to bring it to the foreground of their thinking.
And what we found out from the citizen survey was that, was it 85% of the respondents read the newsletter, so that a newsletter article might be very appropriate.
I should say, I do think that we can serve an educational role, educating people, not just about the tree ordinance, but about trees, without necessarily posing a conflict of interest. Particularly since, as part of our charter, the whole goal of Chapter 12 is considered to be protecting the urban forest. And so that really is part of our role. So I do think that we can do outreach. I mean, we don't have to be tree huggers. I'm not suggesting we do that, but I think we can play a role just in terms of educating people. And I really like the idea of the city champion tree as one way of doing it.
We've agreed in discussion, and we think the arborist does a very good job of educating people. His outreach has been very good. He's had a number of articles. He's really reached out to people during the drought, how to water plants.
Absolutely.
But we do believe that more could be done. He's one person doing it, and we would certainly stand ready to support his efforts.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, in fact, I do think that may be one reason why we've had fewer hearings in the last 2 years. It's because of the city arborist's activities. So I make that very clear.
Okay, good. Any other questions? Josh?
Last year, when the city arborist came and did a very interesting presentation about the canopy, I was actually out in the audience, but one of the ideas that he suggested we think about, I don't know that he was quite to the point of advocating for it, but was allowing people to have credits, in a sense, for planting a tree. And I don't want to put you on the spot. I would like at some point to hear the Tree Commission's opinion about some of the very forward-thinking policies that the arborist has asked us to think about. I guess the idea in that one being that you incentivize people to plant trees knowing that if they want to remove a tree later on, that they they have a credit towards that. So I would, if you have an opinion now, I'd love to hear it, or just in the future, it'd be good also.
Yeah, we've discussed this, and we think it's an excellent idea. And one thing that the city arborist has been emphasizing over and over again is the importance of planting now, because we have, and I don't want to repeat what Todd is going to be stating, but we have an aging canopy, and it's reaching it's at the end of its life, and we need to start planting now in order to start replacing it. And this idea of having a credit is one aspect of that. So yeah, I would say we're all very much in favor of that.
Thank you.
There is an expression in the tree community, which is what's the best time to plant a tree? Well, the best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago. The second best time is tomorrow. Right?
Okay. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And we'll take a short 5-minute break, and then we'll come back for the final items, the update from the Public Safety Committee and the discussion on Safe Tacoma. And if we're still going strong, discussion on the Hospital Land Use Committee. We have 4 up here. And despite my promise that that would be a 5-minute break, it was more like 10. So we're just running over on everything tonight.
Quickest break we ever had.
Okay. We're now on the update from the Public Safety Citizens Advisory Committee, and the chair of the committee is here, and I see at least one other member of the committee. Well,
That's all we need.
have at it. What do you want to tell us?
Well, I think what I wanted to tell you, we told you back in January, you have a report of ours in front of you. I don't have much to add to that, maybe some modification or some further news on the safety fair issue, which has just come up last week. But that's really, you're pretty current. You know, reading this report, you're current. So if you have any questions about the report.
Okay. Councilmember Siemens.
Thank you. Yes, the thing that jumps out at me as if it was in bold and red is the, on page 3, about the 6th bullet down, automated external defibrillators. Could you give us an update on that?
As far as I know, from what I heard from Suzanne, which was about a week ago, is that the factory that's making it had some kind of an inspection, and they stopped production, and they're resuming production, and we're waiting for the defibrillators to show up.
Barb, is there a reason why we have to stick with that manufacturer if they're unable to deliver their product?
I have asked Benita George, the management assistant in my office, who has been overseeing this project, if she could basically go kind of higher up in the organization and to find out when we are likely to receive them, if we should look at another vendor. This was the manufacturer and the vendor that were recommended by the American Red Cross. But we can certainly explore some other options given the delays we've experienced.
Right. Did we ever explore the possibility of piggybacking on the county contract or anything like that?
I don't recall that we did not do that. We basically just went with the vendor recommended by the American Red Cross. We can certainly explore that since we've experienced some difficulties.
Thank you. It's, this is a lingering thing, and I praise the Lord that we haven't had anyone need those tools up to this point, but could happen any day.
You're preaching to the choir, Councilmember Siemens.
Yeah, and I hope that the committee is not expending time on this at this point, because certainly you're I see your role, and this is one of the things that I hope that we can discuss tonight, is I see the role of the committee as being an advisory committee to this council and not as a supplement to city staff. And so one of the things that I hope that we come out of tonight is some direction to you on the things that we would like you to work on. Not to say that you couldn't add on some topic areas. I know that, recently there's been some discussion as there was an interview here of a new member for the Public Safety Policy Committee, and I know that some members have wanted to talk about deprioritizing the enforcement of marijuana laws within Tacoma Park, and I think that an issue like that, it's two things. If it's the public safety, if it's a policy committee of this council, and you take on I don't think you should be taking on a large initiative like that without some direction from the council to do that. But at the same time, I think, and so what I say is if it's a kind of a self-generating project from a group of people within Tacoma Park, I would like to see it work more like we saw the gun control group, the people who wanted to outlaw handguns within Tacoma Park, that they formed their own group and sought authorization from the council or sanctioning from the council. And I thought that worked very well in that case. My concern is that I think there are things that this council, I know the things that I would like to see the Public Safety Policy Committee work on that I don't want to be put on the side because of work on other things, major things like that. And I don't want that to be interpreted as a position for or against the deprioritization of marijuana use, because I think that's something that other departments have looked at, other cities have looked at, and it can be, I think it would be valuable for this council to discuss that. Anyways, off my little soapbox for a minute. Yeah, you had it.
Sure. Well, I guess I was hoping to get a little bit more clarification on that, insofar as this research into what other cities have done, as well as research into the effects of the ordinances and so forth, is something that has already been mostly completed in terms of gathering the information. It really wouldn't be a major time-consuming thing for the committee to really put it all together and turn it into some sort of a recommendation. The challenge is that there's been a question as to, regardless of the amount of time that would take, is that even something that we're authorized to do? Can we take on a project, study it, put the information together, and make a recommendation on an issue that hasn't been asked of us from the City Council? And it seemed that my reading of the ordinance that authorized the creation of the Safety Committee says yes, which makes sense, because y'all are part-time, you're limited in the amount of time that you could really be looking into issues and really thinking about and researching what's happening elsewhere in the country and thinking about what things you want to ask us to do. So it seems like, I agree that if there are things that you're specifically asking us to do and our plates are full, that there's that concern about would taking on some innovative, proactive kind of task be in conflict with the amount of time that we utilize. But as of right now, there's
we haven't asked you for anything.
You haven't asked us.
Right.
The research is already almost all compiled, and there's it was mainly two of us that did the legwork on that. There's 7 or 8 other members of the committee. I would say if you want us to do something, ask us, and hopefully the 7 or 8 members of the committee could put in enough time. And if it turns out that the 1 or 2 of us that need a few more hours to compile it and put it in the form of motion for us to issue as an official recommendation. Somehow can't find the time. But I mean, we're talking in so many hypotheticals in terms of, are we really going to be at that point where we say, oh, we almost got you that report that you wanted from us on such and such issue, except we spent that extra 2 hours last week on the marijuana issue. I mean, that's just not.
That's not where you are today.
Right.
First, I appreciate the report that you put together and the work that you put in on the public safety issues in Tacoma Park. As a council member, I have to say that I don't feel that. I feel like we should have been more directive to you on what we would like to see and what we would like the Public Safety Committee to provide to this council. And so I certainly don't fault the fact that some hours have been spent or some time spent on working on things where you're trying to guess what we want or make suggestions on what we want. But I would like us to provide you with some requests for tasks, and maybe that includes decriminalization or deprioritization of marijuana use. Or maybe that's something you can do in addition to the things we ask you to do. I really don't care on that. My feeling is that a subject like that is probably going to become a time sink that at some point is going to have to spin off to a separate group, just because of the amount of time it's going to take when we get into some of the legal issues and some of the other things going on.
Again, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say one of the things that I would like the policy committee to come back to this council on is recommendations on reporting that we should be requesting from the police department, so we can do a better job of oversight of the police department. And whether that be metrics or whatever, I would like the committee to look at best practices at other jurisdictions around the country. I don't think that just counting number of arrests is necessarily the most effective way of measuring the quality of safety in Tacoma Park, but I would like recommendations to come back from the committee for this council to implement a reporting mechanism for the police department to this council, so that we have a better feeling of what's going on, whether that be use of force, whether it be crimes committed, arrests made, case closures. There's a lot of things that I could speculate it might be, and that different jurisdictions use. But I would like to hear, I would like the committee to work on something like that we could then turn into a policy that serves the community with better policing.
How would this direction come to us? Would somebody write it up for us?
I'm hopeful that this council tonight could agree to this approach, and maybe we could agree on some tasks. Maybe that's not the one, but maybe we could agree to some tasks that we would like the committee to work on next year.
We would welcome and more, yes. I wanted to concur with what you're saying. One of the two official recommendations that we made to the City Council last year was a motion that I introduced to fund the police department's hiring of a full-time data analyst. And I'm thankful to y'all that happened, and to the chief for getting the person in place. And I think that is something that was needed to be able to then move forward with looking at the metrics as you're suggesting. And I think it would be a great idea for the safety committee this year then to work with the new data analyst and gather the data and do precisely what you asked. And I think that'd be a great task for us to take on. I also just wanted to, though, looking a little bit more abstract than just the specifics of the marijuana issue, I think that it's important in terms of the council deciding what our committee and really any of the committees should be doing to keep in mind the legislative language that established us while I do agree that we should be working on things that are recommended from the council, Section 2.16.090, Article 4A, says that we're also supposed to be conveying information regarding community needs and expectations, long-range visions and goals. That's an exact quote. And it's acting as a conduit between the residents, the police department, and the council. So in other words, it seems to me that the vision is that there would be some things that we work on that you all ask us to work on. There'd be other things that, by kind of having our feelers out in the community and our eyes and ears turned toward other innovative things that are happening in public safety throughout the country, that we would come up with some of our own initiated projects as well. So I wouldn't want you to amend this law to say that we're only allowed to work on things that are asked of us by the council, and that we can't ever take on a safety committee initiated measure, whether it be the marijuana one or any number of other things that might come up in the future.
I'm hopeful this council gets to that discussion at another time. I think tonight's not the night, but thank you.
Okay.
Councilmember Clay.
Well, thank you both for coming, and thank you for this report. Couple things. When the police chief first came on, actually shortly after he came on, we had a conversation about reinvigorating some of our community safety patrols, and he mentioned that he had a plan, and if I would hold tight, he would announce his plan. And I believe that part of that is called the Citizens on Patrol. Is that part of that idea? Are you all involved in the Citizens on Patrol activity at all, helping coordinate?
We heard about it by email. I mean, the way it started was that there was a discussion. Well, I'm not sure you need to know.
I'm just so the answer is no. Essentially, you're not engaged in it at this point. That's fine.
Well, I mean, we had made plans that I would attend the meeting next Wednesday to represent the safety committee there and to be involved.
Okay.
One idea that we have in the works is that preparing a little doorknob flyer that would have safety information, the police number to call, the non-emergency number, and so forth. Some street safety tips, a variety of things like that, and that this is still in discussion. We haven't decided yet to do this, but I've been taking the lead on promoting that we would get these made, and then that would be sort of a tool that would give somebody something to do if they're interested in getting involved in their communities, that they'd have something very concrete and tangible to start off doing, going around and putting these on doorknobs, and that we could coordinate getting those out and covering really the whole city. But again, the plan is still in formulation. So I wouldn't want to say that we're not involved. I'd say that we're in the early planning and formulation stages of that.
Okay.
Chief, did you have something you want to add on that?
The Public Safety Committee had brought Citizens on Patrol, and there's another program called Safety Contacts, which I was not briefed about until about 60 days ago, which I was briefed by a member of the Public Safety Committee. I then reached out, and I've been talking to different people that have been on the safety patrols and have been on the contacts. And what we are doing is we're going to have a meeting. We had talked we need to bring everybody together. I've been getting input at all the community meetings I've been attending over the last year. And I put out an invitation. We've invited all the safety contacts based on the list that the Public Safety Committee gave me and all the people on safety patrols, and we're going to bring them all together and see where we're at. This is a program.
How about a safety conference?
Well, it's basically that's what it's going to be. The safety contacts, nobody on my staff had been involved in, or at least they hadn't briefed me. It was the committee that brought it to my attention. The safety patrols I've known about. What I've done is I went through each ward. I've talked about safety patrols. I do have some concerns about safety patrols. Safety contacts is something that's been out there that we've been actually using their list, but nobody ever said, quote, it's a group that had started up several years ago. So next week, we're bringing everybody together to get input and see what we need to do to improve it. Safety Contacts is in place, but it can be more improved and more citizens a part of our server list so we can get more information out. Safety patrols, I want to see how many people are actively involved. I do have concerns, but I want to talk to the people that have been doing it and see how it can work into our safety and our neighborhood plan.
I think that the major concerns that I hear from folks in my ward are how can we partner with the police more effectively. So any way that your entity can provide support to that is great. And more information about the crime deterrence. A lot of times a crime will happen and then someone will call me and say, you know, how did I prevent this? And then it goes out on the listserv, but then I still get the call the next time. So I don't know what the solution to that is. But
well, I'm going to address that later in the
excellent. And then the third thing that I would say is that it's clear. I'm excited about the all of the emails that I get about arrests that are made. It seems like I get one every other day, which I think is a great measure of success, and I'm really happy about that. I mean, it seems like the business community has been a strong partner in some of these through actually the video surveillance. So anything to encourage more engagement of the business community, and I just want to give that feedback and let it sit at that. Thank you.
I have two issues that I would like the Public Safety Committee to consider adding to their list of things to do and the council to talk about. The first is something I mentioned earlier tonight is street lights. So I think the committee could actually play a role in helping, probably helping Darrell and the city manager do the research into how we might be able to take advantage of this law that has been recently passed in Annapolis to take over the street lights and set them up as municipal street lights. And there's probably a bunch of research and data crunching that needs to be done around how much money we could save or what it would cost us so we can make an informed decision about that. And then the second is very much tied to what Colleen was mentioning, is if the committee could sort of go around and try and scour the country on innovative programs that engage the citizens and police in making communities safer. So, you know, crime watches are one manifestation of that, but I'm sure that there are other programs and other ideas out there, and it'd be good for us to have a briefing on that and then be able to talk with the Public Safety Committee and the chief about which ideas are really feasible or possible for our community. So those are my two things which I think would be very concrete and very helpful to making the city a safer place.
And if I can just find out one thing from you. One of the things that may come up as we discuss committees in general is the function of various committees providing other members on other committees, the kind of cross-fertilization of committees and referencing back and forth. And my sense is that the Public Safety Committee has maybe some going each direction. You have some members who sit on other committees, and other committees have members who are represented on your committee.
That happens.
And how is that working? Are all of those necessary? Are they helpful? Any feedback you can give would be good.
I think we initiated that, and so, of course, we think it's wonderful.
Do you still think it's wonderful?
Yes.
Is it working?
Yes, it is working, and particularly in committees where there is a natural, if you want to, organic, if you want to use the new word, of crossover of issues. So that works very well with the Emergency Preparedness Committee, where we have actually two people. One of them is a co-chair at this point, Wolfgang, and Buddy is on that. We had a member at the Safe Roadways Committee, but that didn't work too well. And we're thinking about getting involved with the Recreation Department because of some of the issues that have to do with conflict avoidance and what have you. training. But, you know, this was initiated by a request from the council years ago, several years ago. Kathy, particularly, is trying to make sure that committees are not in each other's hair in the sense of initiating programs that are, you know, that generate some conflict, and that committees are informed of what each of them are doing so that they're not duplicating efforts. So I mean, that was the purpose behind it, and I think that is still, that's still working. I mean, that's still a meaningful goal. It does get to be work for the people to do that.
All right. And you have whatever you need in place to get the feedback from the people who are sitting on those other committees.
They come they come to our meeting.
And your folks.
They report.
Who you have a regular part of your agenda where you find out what's going on, and other ones.
Part of our agenda up front is short reports, and one of the reports we get regularly is from people on other committees.
And you said that there, like with the safe roadways, that didn't work. Was it because of difficulty of attending too many meetings? Was it does it get down to, you know, kind of picking the right individuals to do it?
It's the second.
And so you can deal with that as you find there are difficulties. You have the mechanisms in place to try and come up with somebody who fits better?
Well, that I think we can manage. The issue, and that has to go into, that gets into the other subject you raised, is how committees operate. And it is not quite clear, nobody at this point has an idea, is that if we have a seat, the Public Safety Committee has a seat on the Emergency Preparedness Committee, does that person have to be approved by the council, or can anybody from the Public Safety Committee walk in and sit in that seat? And for how long do that particular person has to sit in that seat? So that's...
And that's the discussion that we haven't had yet.
That's a discussion.
But that's why I wanted your input to see how it's working, since you have a number of...
It's working fine.
Okay.
I think that the only issue is the one you raised, which is finding the right person to sit in the right seat who has a natural organic interest in that workings of that committee.
Okay, thanks. Other questions? Councilmember Robinson and Councilmember Berry.
I like to make lists, and I want to make sure that you get, that we devise a way to hear back from the committees when we ask for research, or when you initiate it yourselves. And my little list here is, if you're going to bring back research, results of research that you do, whether we ask for it or not, that some kind of headers on your report would be fiscal impact and best practices in the broader community, innovative ideas, and legal ramifications. And whether it's the marijuana issue or the patrols issue or the lights issue or criminal prioritization of one sort or another, that would be things that I would like to see as headers. And I also heard that outreach into the community so that you can synthesize community issues is something that we would expect from you, probably all committees. So there's research and there's outreach. And then this cross-fertilization issue with the other committees, I hadn't given much thought, but I'm fascinated by that. That's all.
I'm becoming very big on customized approaches to examining the various challenges within the city, realizing that there's no one cookie-cutter approach for all of the areas of the city. And it may be that this committee would be well served to look at the public safety challenges in the different geographical areas of the city, as the police department does. Over on our side, we have lots of car thefts, for example, and the chief has enlightened me to the favored vehicles of the car thieves. We know what those are now, and we have an idea of where the thieves tend to prey. And it might be that an approach with C-Safe, where an effort is made to inform the citizens of these apartment towers where the victimization rate tends to be quite high, about the likelihood of their being a victim with the type of vehicle that they have, and maybe making available to them the what do they call the clubs? Yeah, the former chief was very big on clubs. There was quite a number of sales of those things, but I think perhaps they have their place, in the repertoire of things that can be used. Similarly, there are other kinds of crime trends around town where working in close cooperation with the police department, there may be a role for citizens, particularly in the crime prevention part of it. And then related to that is, as I've driven around town, I've noticed that there may be 10 or 11 signs. I think they're neighborhood watch and other kinds of programs, and you can usually tell the era when these programs were popular by the amount of rust and mold on the signs. And if the signs don't have any meaning anymore because the people who were once there to carry out the neighborhood watch responsibilities, then either the signs should go away or they should be changed, because they're certainly not a deterrent to anybody right now. But maybe they need to be replaced with some other program that is thought of and put into practice. We may need another way of communicating that we are united and that people are watching, looking after one another through the various ways that we now know we can look after people. And I think focus, and we've been talking a lot about focusing the last several weeks with committees that have come before us with long lists of things to do. And I'd certainly be in favor of focusing on the public outreach, public education, public organization, all under the watchful management of the police department. I think that there's a fruitful area there that we can cooperate on, and I think some very good results are likely to come about because of it.
Does anybody else have any other thoughts? I know that we don't have time tonight to have the discussion about kind of the prioritized list for the committee, but we can revisit that.
Okay. Until then, you can just do what I said.
Well, one way I'd like to proceed with this is to, I hope my notes are accurate, to type these up and email it to the rest of the safety committee and see if any of these particular things, I know y'all are going to want to prioritize them in terms of what to ask us to focus on, but I think a lot of it too is a matter of what really motivates any particular individuals on the advisory council to take on. So might as well give them a heads up on this list just to see if that could spark some interest and follow up. And I wrote down which of you recommended which things, so perhaps individuals interested in any of these number of things can contact you directly and pick your brains some more and get some more ideas about how to proceed.
I would suggest that if you are thinking about getting started on any of those things, that the request on metrics and reporting is something that would be valuable during the budget process, which is coming up soon.
Let me put in a plea for something that I've been in front of the council for a number of times, and that is getting down on paper how you expect committees to operate. and specifically how members are selected and approved for committees. This has, as far as I'm concerned, this has been a bane of our existence, is that people come up, people volunteer, and then are not seen again. And we're running into the same situation again. And there's a person who was recently appointed and showed up once. And I'm in the process of requesting, will be, if she does not show up, the person does not show up again, next meeting, I'm going to be requesting, which is the way it's written in the charter, that the council take that person's name off the list. So again, I would recommend that people who volunteer for committees be required to go to a number of meetings and then be approved only provisionally for a particular period of time, because otherwise, to get, for a 3-year appointment with no vetting is, I think, is somewhat optimistic. Is that a good word? Thank you.
We'll put that on the list for our committee discussion.
Well, that's been on the list, and as a matter of fact, I've had a number of discussions with Jesse, and I understand the tragedy and the situation. So,
yeah, we'll be getting to that real soon.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
I think I'll stay here. I think I'll stay here.
Okay.
You enjoy it that much?
Yeah.
Next, before we start this item on discussion on Safe Tacoma, if I can suggest that I think that this may take a little while and that we will not want to then take up the last item on our discussion. I don't think we'll have the time or the energy to do it, and so I would like to remove it from tonight's agenda, and therefore the staff who's here for that can go home, and we'll reschedule it again very soon. Is it that simple? The last agenda item. Do we?
Can we recreate? Is it only for the Washington Adventist Hospital? For now?
Yes, for now.
Okay. Sure, let's create it. Fine, create it. That's 3 votes. All in favor?
I agree, as long as we don't necessarily have to talk about it now, but there has to be some way that the Health Services Impact Committee and the Land Use Committee.
See, we get into the discussion.
I think we worked it all out. The question is what the mission is of and the structure should be. I mean, I would like direction on that so that materials can be provided.
I think we can fit this in again real soon for a short discussion. Well, we'll do it for when you're here. How long are you going to be in Tennessee?
I thought we had really pretty much hammered it out last time, so. Can we give it 5 minutes and see if we can get it done in 5 minutes?
All right, it's still on the agenda. Sorry, Suzanne, you almost got home. Okay.
You probably have a lien on the hook as well.
So, I don't know. Barb, do you want to lead off on this?
Sure. I'll just make some brief remarks given the lateness of the hour. I know there's a number of people here for this item. Just for those who don't know the history of this, there was $75,000 included in the city's FY07 budget for a cross-jurisdictional crime prevention initiative, which has been commonly referred to as Safe Tacoma. As noted in the agenda cover sheet, Interested residents of both the city and the district have formed an entity known as Safe Tacoma Incorporated, and I think two of their board members are in attendance this evening, Seth Grimes, who's the president, and Andy Kellerman, who I believe is still the treasurer. Is that right, Andy? In FY07, the city did provide $380 to Safe Tacoma Incorporated to assist with some certain startup expenses prior to the release of funds by the District of Columbia. And I neglected to mention that the council's commitment in FY07 was contingent upon an equal contribution being made by the District of Columbia, which in fact has occurred. Because there was only $380 spent in FY07 at the direction of the council, the balance of the $75,000 was carried over to this year's budget, which is the fiscal year 2008. As we discussed back, I believe it was in May of last year, under Maryland law, municipalities or governmental entities can enter into agreements with private groups, basically to provide services on behalf of the governmental body. There is a requirement by state law that the government maintain supervision and control over the public funds, and the council would need to define what public purpose. In this instance, it would be contracting with Safe Tacoma Incorporated to perform on its behalf. When we talked about this last May, there was discussion about bringing back a memorandum of understanding. And I think from my perspective at least, was waiting for a little bit more of a detailed work plan, and I think what you have before you, this included in the agenda packet dated February 1st, 2008, with a more detailed expenditure authorization request from Safe Tacoma Incorporated, which would outline how some of the city's funds would be expended. I don't want to get into too much detail about that because obviously Mr. Grimes and Mr. Kellerman are here and they could better address that than I can. But in essence, I think the primary expenditure would be for the hiring of a program coordinator who would be supervised by, it was at this time Mr. Grimes as the president of Safe Tacoma. Included in your agenda packet was a draft of a job description that the city had received. I think with that, I don't want to steal any of Mr. Grimes or Mr. Kellerman's thunder, so I would probably suggest that they maybe outline a little bit more what they have planned.
All right, thank you, City Manager Matthews. Yeah, I'm Seth Grimes, a resident of Willow Avenue in Ward 1. Andy Kellerman, whom you've already met, is Safe Tacoma's treasurer and I'm the president. Unfortunately, our other two officers, Faith Wheeler, our vice president, and Sarah Green, our secretary, couldn't be here tonight because of a conflicting advisory neighborhood commission meeting in the district. They're both advisory neighborhood commissioners as well as Safe Tacoma board members. We also have on our advisory board, advisory neighborhood commissioner, advisory committee, excuse me, Judy Jones, whose ANC single-member district covers the other side of Eastern Avenue from Tacoma Park from Ward 3, and then Sharita Whiting, who's former ANC commissioner as well. Our fifth board member, Natasha Wilkins, is in Atlanta right now. She's also a District of Columbia resident. I'm going to start off with, I will try to make this very tight, some seemingly off-topic remark, which is to thank Mayor Williams, Councilmember Wright, and Councilmember Robinson for attending last week's Focus on Old Tacoma program, which was sponsored by the Old Town Residents Association, of which I'm also president, the Westmoreland Area Community Organization, and Victory Tower Residents Association. In addition to the council members and the mayor, we had city staff represented, the principal property owners in Old Tacoma, and according to Chantal Warzala, our OTRA vice president, we had around 40 people in the audience. This is an example of a citizen-organized, community-organized initiative that has brought together, in this case, representatives of the city, of the community, the property owners, also of Historic Tacoma and the Old Tacoma Business Association, both cross-jurisdictional entities operating and focusing on the Old Tacoma area. By all measures, this meeting was a success, and we do hope to have a follow-on meeting probably in May that would be a look at resident visions about Old Tacoma, the streetscape, the design, issues like that, that have been pending on the city agenda for a long time with resident involvement, but we want to accelerate the realization of that agenda and really fully engage the residents. There have been other successful community meetings. For instance, I'll mention
Philadelphia Eastern Neighborhood Penn Crime Forum that Chief Rakucci was kind enough to attend back in November, that was co-sponsored by OTRA and by Safe Tacoma. Chief Rakucci reported that the 40-plus people who attended that were the largest community meeting he has attended in his tenure here in Tacoma Park. I would guess that that's still true. Safe Tacoma's origins trace back to a similar community meeting in very unfortunate circumstances in the spring of 2006 in the wake of the Saloma homicide. But actually, Safe Tacoma can be traced back earlier than that, several years, to an unfortunate similar homicide incident in the District of Columbia that gave rise to the joint being District of Columbia and Maryland anti-crime task force that former council member Austin Lane served on. So we have a history of cross-jurisdictional, citizen-involved, citizen-focused crime prevention efforts in this community, which is not to say that we do not have full confidence in the police. Crime prevention is not solely a police job, it is a community job as well. And what Safe Tacoma is about is community-focused, community-involved, community-initiated crime prevention. And I will argue that we in the community can do things that the police on their own, even with cooperation of the community, cannot. Former Police Chief Kramer suggested adaptation of the C-Safe model, which has been successful in Tacoma-Langley Crossroads, to the old Tacoma area. That involved budgeting for hiring 2 staff. At this point, I would say that 2 staff are not necessary for old Tacoma. Our current request is for approximately half-time staff, at least initially, and that is, as the city manager indicated, the primary expenditure of District of Columbia and Tacoma Park, Maryland funds. Again, former City Council member Joy Austin Lane was instrumental in securing those funds, not only from the City of Tacoma Park, but also from our partners in the District of Columbia. The District of Columbia in the Metropolitan Police Department does have community-focused officers, but they also fully support the Safe Tacoma program, to the extent where Commander Brown, 4th District Commander Brown, said to me, no, she's not interested in running Safe Tacoma or anything like that. This was just the week before last. She has a police department to run, and that she will happily approve of any legitimate expenditures and initiatives that we have. The release of Tacoma Park, Maryland funds was supposed to follow on the release of District of Columbia funds, as noted, and I included, I put on your chairs in the break, a copy of work session notes from February of 2007, a year ago, that noted that release was supposed to follow on. We've gone back and forth on the issue of a detailed work plan. We fully engaged with the Metropolitan Police Department, not just the officers, but also the people in the back offices doing the financial management, to create a grant agreement and a work plan that was fully satisfactory to them. When they noted that we were not a 501c3 tax exempt organization, which we now are, by the way, we found a community partner willing to serve as fiduciary agent. We did the same thing when the issue of 501c3 status was raised in Tacoma Park. We engaged with the Montgomery County Community Foundation, which serves as the fiduciary agent for the Tacoma Foundation, and we would have pursued that if that had been the direction that was indicated. We responded to every request from the Tacoma Park City Administration for cooperation in getting a agreement in place for Safe Tacoma. We gave, on 2 different occasions, copies of the district grant agreement to the City of Tacoma Park. The last I heard about it from the city was Chief Rakucci's informing me when I asked that he had passed on the agreement to others in the city administration to review and had not heard anything back. So at every step we've tried to work with the city administration to get that agreement in place. I also want to bring up the question of the Old Tacoma Business Association, of which I'm now a board member. In any case, the city has an agreement with OTBA that was concluded in 2004. It's a 3-year agreement and doesn't include anything by way of requirements for adherence to city procurement requirements or anything like that. It's a very straightforward agreement, and I'd be quite happy to model a Safe Tacoma agreement on the OTBA agreement. OTBA similarly is an independent corporation, cross-jurisdictional, 501c3 status. Everything that Safe Tacoma is, I'd be happy to model our agreement on this. The precedent's already in place. This agreement was approved by the city attorney's office and countersigned by the city attorney, albeit under the city manager Matthew's predecessor.
back in 2004, and I think it has served the community, the City of Tacoma Park, the Business Association, and other community constituents very well. We haven't had the agreement in place, but Safe Tacoma has proceeded with programming initiatives nonetheless without the full set of, without the funding that we would really like in order to hire someone. We do have a work plan. I put that on your chairs. That was found fully satisfactory by the District of Columbia in releasing the $75,000 that they agreed to release. We stand ready to, when we are given instructions what the City of Tacoma Park needs by way of a work plan, to work that out with you all. That has not been forthcoming, so we have proceeded as best we can. We've engaged in 2 rounds now of conflict resolution, peer mediation training. The second of those rounds has included members of the Tacoma Park Community Action Group. The president of that group is here today and will make any remarks if you choose to call on him. And we have further peer mediation training, conflict resolution training scheduled for the upcoming weeks. We have other initiatives that we are trying to develop, in particular youth activities programming that would be in cooperation on the Tacoma Park side, primarily with the Community Action Group. Tababo Asefa can address that if you wish. Councilmember Siemens knows a lot about that as well, and with similar partners on the District of Columbia side, and especially with the help of Natasha Wilkins, and we hope with former Councilmember Austin Lane, who has recently joined the Safe Tacoma Advisory Committee. We hope similarly to put in place youth repeat offenders programming. We've had discussions with other community members who have expertise in this area. I will emphasize that we have spent the last year plus in developing community partnerships. We have a memorandum of understanding in place with the Tacoma DC Neighborhood Association. You've heard about our interlocking directorates, is what we used to call them in college, well, with the ANCs and with other community organizations. We are very well positioned to create what we think is needed for Old Tacoma, for the focus on Old Tacoma, which is community-initiated, bottom-up, responding to the needs of the community as we very much attempt to listen to them. We don't try to impose a top-down model on the community. Rather, we talk to people in the community and hear what they need. We have Terry Goings, who is the president of the Village High School Parent-Teacher Student Organization, on our advisory committee, and you've heard about other members. So, you know, that's what we're all about, is listening to the community and trying to fashion programs that respond to the needs that we have identified through dialogue with the community. So we're here today to ask you to release now $25,000 in the allocated funding. This is something that we've discussed with Councilmember Siemens and Councilmember and Wright, and to carry over the remaining a little bit less than $50,000 into the FY 2009 budget for release in 2 slices in FY 2009, as you see that we are making progress toward our goals on a defined schedule. On a defined schedule. I think it's time to put the funding questions behind us, to move on with the Safe Tacoma program as the council has been discussing it with the community for 2 years. So I would urgently request that you release the initial slice, $25,000 in funding now, carry over $50,000 minus a bit to FY 09 with a schedule for release of that money then. I will conclude by saying that we are no more in existence because we believe that the police are not doing a good job than the Public Safety Citizens Committee is in existence for that reason. I was a member of the City Manager Selection Committee along with Councilmember Robinson, I believe. That's not to say that the city and the council of that time were not capable of hiring a good, competent city administrator. I was a member of the TASD Committee, Tax and Service Duplication issues with Council Members Clay and Robinson. That's not to say that city staff were not capable of analyzing the financial situation with tax duplication and rebates with the council. That's to say that there's expertise in the community that the council should be eager to tap, to harness in favor of the betterment of the city of Tacoma Park. Thank you. I'll also note, I don't think I mentioned Roz Grigsby, Executive Director of the Old Tacoma Business Association, is also happy to put in a word for Safe Tacoma. And I guess the other member of the Public Safety Citizens Advisory Committee is left. But you'll note that distributed in the council packet and then my supplemental papers, we had letters from a year ago asking the council to release the funding to Safe Tacoma.
Chief, you have something you want to say?
Yeah, I'd like to make some remarks. I prepared these remarks today for tonight and have been going over these remarks. And then some things that were raised here tonight. This is probably the right time for me to speak because it's not that that I'm opposed to what Safe Tacoma is doing. It's what direction we go and how it affects the whole city. So I'd ask you to hear me out because it's almost basically a review of what we've tried to do in the first year here. And by the time this meeting ends tonight, I'll celebrate my year's anniversary with the council and the manager at the rate we're going right now. But I'd like to... If I get my raise at midnight. What I'd like to do is just go through a little how I feel about it. And this is not us versus Safe Tacoma, because we all have the same thing in mind, is to reduce crime in this community and make it safer. And nobody in this room believes in community policing more than me. After 39 years, and the last 15 or 20 has been based on community policing. So let me go through my feel where we're at with Safe Tacoma and where I want to be with the department, because the two do kind of collide, and you all will have to make the policy decision where we go, obviously with what I want to do in my budget and what they want to do with their budget. As I come before you tonight, I'm asking for the funds that have been slated for Safe Tacoma to be used in my budget to be reallocated to a position of community relations specialist, a civilian position which would be paid for with these funds, a position which would serve the entire city, not just one ward or, as I've been told earlier tonight, parts of two others. Upon assuming this position exactly 1 year ago, I was given the immediate goals of several things. One, serious crime, reducing it and dealing with it. Reaching full authorized strength. Improving and building relationships with adjoining departments. Improving communication with our residents and working with Safe Tacoma. So let me address each issue. Serious crime was an issue when you hired me. It was an issue before I got here, and it's obviously a very big issue today. Not in just one ward, but in all 6 wards. Crime doesn't pick where it decides to appear. We have done a lot of things with the hiring of the crime analysts, which I think in just a short period they've been there, and I know Colleen's made some comments at council meeting, has made a big difference. We have obviously formed a plainclothes unit. As we sit here tonight, I have 2 details on the street working. Our tactical unit's working on a burglary detail in the 6th ward, which will go down into the 5th and the 4th, and we have a detail that's working robberies as we speak here tonight. Have we reduced crime? Crime still is an issue, but we've made some very significant arrests and closed a multitude of cases. We are better at picking out where crime occurs. I give you an example. The first night of the burglary detail, and you've gotten that information, was out on the street. They were in the right position where crime occurred. At 4 o'clock in the morning, they made an arrest and took a career criminal off the street. We continue to work on serious crime and continue to address those issues. Full authorized staffing. As we sit here tonight, we're at full authorized staffing. We continue to keep people on a list so that we can continue to hire. We have 3 in training on the street now, 3 in rookie school. By June, we'll have full staff on the street, which will open up other opportunities for us to do more things than we've been able to do up to this point. Improving and building our relationships with adjoining departments. I think the results that we have that you know about speak for themselves. My relationship with Chief Manger is on a personal level. I can call him at any time. He calls me. We speak on issues. Our relationship with Montgomery County, which I think was expected when I got here, is better than it's ever been. We train with them. We work with them. We meet every week with their crime analysts and the officers and detectives at the Silver Spring Station. CSAFE has allowed us to work with Tacoma Park, with Prince George's County, which we do on a continual basis. We work with their detectives. We work with their crime analysts. The relationship between the 3 jurisdictions has improved and gets better by the day. We can pick up the phone and we all can help each other, and that's what's going on. Based on what I think was occurring before I got here, I think it's a better relationship, it's a more productive, and we make significant strides in improving the safety in our community, and we'll continue to do that. The 4th thing, improved communication with our residents. I think if you look at the emails that our PIO puts out every day, how rapid we get them out. I would just point out the last Saturday, we had a water main break at 7:15. By 9 o'clock in the morning, we had something out on the webpage and to the community. We will continue to do that. When crime occurs, we're putting them out as quickly as we get the information so the community knows where the crime has occurred, if we've made an arrest, who we work with, and how successful we've been. And we're also putting them out when we don't make arrests. I think that's helped. One of the things that no one sees is how many emails I get back from citizens, although I share them with the city manager, of people that are happy, people that have questions, and we continue to communicate. Our PIO, Kathy Plevy, who many of you have met, has been excellent in working. She's on the computer 7 days a week to make sure that we're responsive to the community. The last one is working with Safe Tacoma. Although we haven't always agreed, I think I have a good working relationship with Seth and Andy, and I've worked with them to provide the information they needed to go to Barb and to the council, and we'll continue to work with them, whatever you decide on what direction we go. My feeling here tonight is that we have been successful in the things that you've asked me to do. The one thing that I have not been able to do, and it's been a frustration to me, and I have discussed with the city manager, is to implement the community policing program that I've done each place I've been before. And that's because we've concentrated on getting staffing and the issues I've just mentioned. Those issues are in place now, and I'm ready to move forward. What we would like to do is, I feel after 2 years, and I know there's been a lot of meetings, a lot of frustrations on the part of Safe Tacoma, but at this time, I think it's time we need to move forward. And I think that money that could be used now should be much better used in creating the position of community relations specialist. Part of the problem with my relationship with Safe Tacoma is it's in my budget, I'm responsible for the money. So technically, by law, I'm responsible in reporting to the manager. And it has created problems because the way it was set up and the way it's working now has caused problems, as I think Seth has pointed out here tonight. If this program is to go forward, I don't think it's a police department program. Although the police department will work with them, it needs to be in a different area. If I'm responsible for the $75,000, then it should be my responsibility to approve the expenditures. If we're going to hire someone and it's going to be in my budget, I'm responsible for managing that person. The money is a very serious issue to me. There have been some problems. They have been resolved, but there were problems on the D.C. side and with some reports being submitted in a timely manner. That has been corrected, and they have taken care of the issue. But I am responsible, as Barb is and as you are, on the monies. We need to be clear on how the monies are going to be spent and make sure that we do meet our responsibilities as financial agents. I take that very seriously, and it's not that I don't want to spend the money, but there are certain things required when we do spend money in a budget that we run within the departments and within the city. As I said, their plan calls for a part-time employee to facilitate the reduction of crime and promote public safety, to be hired by them and supervised by them with an office in D.C. My job as police chief is to reduce crime and to facilitate public safety, a job I believe I have been doing. I serve all the residents, not just one ward or parts of 2 others. A small group of residents near the D.C. border have concerns which I believe we have been responsive to. Maybe it wasn't done in the past, but we have been very responsive to the crime occurring not only in Ward 1, but 2, 3, 4, and 5, and 6. The participation in progress has been slow by Safe Tacoma. In my 2 previous assignments of chief, I've started very successfully community policing programs. That's what I want to go forward with tonight with the community relations specialist. Programs that would be started and would be started immediately: Citizens Academy, Youth Academy, Citizens Advisory Board, Youth Advisory Board, Neighborhood Beat Meetings, Business Watch, Neighborhood Watch. Yes, Mr. Berry, the signs got old because we're not doing anything with them. We need to revive that program, and that would be one of my goals. Volunteers in Policing, VIPS, which the program we started in Front Royal has received national awards, and it's something that we got volunteers here. They're sitting behind me, they're sitting beside me. I want to get a program started like that. Crime Solvers, Senior Citizen Programs, Property Owner Association, Departmental Open House. All of these have been on hold to deal with crime and staffing issues. After looking at what we can do and what we haven't been able to do, we need the officers, sworn commission officers, on the street fighting crime. A civilian can perform this position, has been done in other departments. I've seen it work. It would work very successful. Safe Tacoma was a program and an idea of the previous chief, modeled after C-Safe. At this point, I don't think it's not a C-Safe program. C-Safe is different. It's a different area, different problems, different issues. You also have to realize C-Safe does cover Montgomery County, PG County, and us. So it's 1/3 of each of them gets a part of Mary Kendall and her staff. And it's worked well, and it's been successful. That's why we've been able to get the grant renewed each year. What I propose would serve the entire city, not just one ward or parts of 2 others. All 6 wards need to have these community policing. They should be a citywide program. I commend Seth, I commend Andy, Faith Wheeler, and Sarah Green, who have worked on this program so hard. But I think it's time that we move on an overall program for the entire city. This program is different from any I've seen anywhere I've been. I think our goals are the same: to engage our community, to get our community involved, and to meet all our community's needs. The question is how we go about it, and obviously policy comes from the council. I think we've been successful in what we've done so far. I think the next year can be more successful, bringing these community policing programs into play. I think it would make a better use of Andy's committee. Lots of the things that we've talked about with the committee, I think would be brought into partnership with that. In briefing the Public Safety Committee last month, I think we're all on the same page. I think we just have to decide how we go about getting there and how we spend the city's funds in the most economical manner to better serve our community. I don't think any of us are opposed to what's been proposed here tonight. It's a matter of how we go about it. I believe my program with the community relations specialist will serve all parts of the city and will move us to the next level, which I think you expected when you brought me on to create these programs and to move forward. Whatever you decide, we will work together with everyone. It's a matter of getting the community on the same page. I think we are on the same page. It's just a matter of how we go about it, and obviously that'll be your decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you very much for that detailed review of the last year.
It's a midnight yet.
Minus an hour and 15 minutes. And also thank you, Seth, for the presentation on Safe Tacoma. I just, a couple questions first, Chief, and that is, how do you, you mentioned this is different than Safe Tacoma, but I see a lot of similarity. We have an area that has a high density of violent crime. We have a multi-jurisdiction program with Safe Tacoma, similar to what we have with C-Safe. And I wonder what you see that leads you to say that it's different than Safe Tacoma, other than we don't have C-Safe funds.
Well, you don't have C-Safe funds, which does make a difference, and it's not under grant. The difference I see is that, you know, we do have crime in the first ward. There's nobody, and there's no one arguing that. But we have programs in place. Partners on Patrol is working real well. Our detectives work very closely with the detectives in the 4th District. Our TAC unit, we're getting ready to initiate walking patrols with both jurisdictions. We both work together targeting the metro station. One of the partners that hasn't been a partner, which I tend to bring into the fold this year, is the transit police. They've been in a transition. They don't have a chief right now. They've been through several acting. They're changing the way they do business. They need to be a partner with us down there. What I feel
is that different than what you do in the Tacoma Langley Crossroads? I mean,
yeah,
you don't work with
police different in each
County.
ward. I mean, when you go to the 6th ward, there's different crime out there, different ways you go about policing. We have addressed it. We only have C-Safe funds. I would tell you probably this will be the last year, based on the state's financial picture and what I've been told. I don't want to change what we're doing out there, and we'll continue to do it. We'll find different ways. The work that Mary Kendall and Gresham do out there is remarkable, because they're answering to 3 masters. We administrate it, but she answers to Commander Johnson, Kevin Davis, the commander in Hyattsville, and she answers to me. And it works so hard at making sure 1/3 goes here, 1/3 goes there. I guess what I'm saying is I want to move forward with this program. I don't see the need for the city to have 2 employees doing the same thing. And I know that Seth feels they will be doing different things and we won't conflict. But I think what we're doing is we're putting money for 2 different things. I think we have a program in place in the department, which is one of the things that all of you asked me to do. And to get to the next level, we're now ready to go to that. We've got crime, it's not under control, but we're handling it in a lot different way, which is more responsive to the community and to you all and to the people that I answer to, and I think it's headed in the right direction. You talked about community policing tonight here. I'm ready to go. I just need help in doing that. That would be my community organizer. The person that's same thing that DC has, which would be working closely with all our different neighborhood groups. I think we all have the same goal in mind. I know where you're coming from. I just think it needs to be under one watch. I have concerns when you put a program financially in another area and say it's in my budget and I'm responsible for it. If you decide to go forward with this, I'm fine with it, but I don't think it belongs in the police budget. Because I think we're duplicating some of the efforts we're doing. I work very hard so we don't duplicate, and so does Seth. And I will tell you that we don't try to duplicate, but I think one person can control it and one person can keep it in one department. And I think we'll meet all the goals they want. Now, obviously, some of the stuff they do is preventive and is not in an area that I am involved in, and I'm not sure where the city's role is in that. And, that's something for you all to decide. We are trying to prevent crime. We're not getting into the repeat offender, other from a criminal standpoint, to lock them up. We're not trying to rehabilitate them, because we do have a program with CSAFE to make sure they get back in the community and get a job. So we're doing things like that.
Okay. First of all, I'd reiterate, I am impressed with the accomplishments that you've attained through the last year, and I didn't say it, but what you've outlined as far as where you want to go in this coming year, I appreciate, and I hope that regardless of the decision of this council tonight or any other night, I hope that you get there, and if this isn't where you find the resources, that you find it somewhere else and come to this council and we approve it. But I'm still struggling with this idea of why CSAFE is different, why having why that wouldn't be rolled in to a citywide program, or why?
Well, I just said I want to do a citywide program. I don't want to do a program in one ward. I've answered that. That's what we're trying to do, sir.
Okay, but CSAFE is in one ward.
CSAFE is a grant program that affects one ward, basically, okay? What we want to do is we want the CSAFE concept in all 6 wards.
Okay.
We don't need 2 or 3 separate programs.
May I respond on a number of points? I will start by saying that Chief Rakucci is correct. I don't disagree with him on almost everything that he said, except for the money question. So I don't see the programs as duplicative. I will emphasize once again the cross-jurisdictional nature of Safe Tacoma as the council designed it several years ago, as has been implemented by the Old Tacoma Business Association, Historic Tacoma, and other efforts that you all are aware of. For instance, fight against the metro development that EYA has proposed, numerous other things. We have cooperation already, just as the police have cooperation between the different departments with the Old Tacoma Business Association, with the Tacoma DC Neighborhood Association, with the ANCs and so on. This is a parallel effort that focuses on citizens, on reaching youth in order to keep them out of trouble. That includes youth in hotspots like Coolidge High School. It's not going to be exactly the same on each side of the border, but it will be roughly equivalent. And I will emphasize also that the spending will be proportionate to the participation on each side of the border. I do not see this as a duplicative program with what the Chief of Police is proposing. I see it as complementary to what he's proposing. And as he goes forward with articulating it, I will be happy to personally support it if it's along the lines of what he's saying. You've moved up. I don't know if you want to add anything to this or continue council member questions.
Good evening, everyone. Nice to see you on this side of the dais, I have to admit.
Welcome back.
Thank you. It wasn't as long as I thought it would be, Bruce, until I jumped into something. The only thing I would add to what's already been said is that I actually really appreciate the Chief's proposal. I think that it is, on an ongoing basis, the right way for the council to provide additional resources to the police department in this respect. So I hope that you will fund his proposal in your next budget. I think that would give him the time to recruit someone train them and get that program rolling. What I would say about the Safe Tacoma initiative is, yes, it does take a long time to start new programs, and I know C-Safe was no different. So much effort has gone into this, and establishing this group really provided DC a mechanism by which they could start contributing to the cross-jurisdictional cooperation that we've talked about for so long. So I would hate to lose that. I think that the focused efforts for crime prevention around the Tacoma Metro do warrant a special coordinator, as has been proposed. But my participation on the board is something that was just authorized, and I would anticipate being on that board in a very active advisory capacity, if not a director's capacity. So I don't know if that gives you some idea of what I'm recommending, but I do think the Safe Tacoma initiative deserves to keep the $75,000. If you need to feel more satisfied with their work plan, then you should ask for that, a revised work plan. But I also think that Chief Rakuchi's proposal is exactly what's needed for the police department to be in a better position, just like they are with the crime analyst, better position to work with a coordinator who is focused on just the Tacoma Metro. And I didn't introduce myself, but I'm Joy Austin Lane, and I'm a member of the public now. And I do want to say Roz Grigsby has been a terrific support throughout Safe Tacoma. Because of her business association position, she has kind of bridged the gap between resident and business and safety and economic development. So I hope she'll have a chance to say something as well.
I'm Rosalind Grigsby. I'm Executive Director of the Old Tacoma Business Association. In the interest of brevity, at the late hour tonight, I will make this quite quick to say I'm here in that sole capacity as representing the Old Tacoma Business Association, and to say that we care deeply about safety and crime prevention in Tacoma Park. We appreciate the efforts that have been undertaken. You know, I've been before you several times on these issues. And we are committed to reducing crime in our community, and we will continue to work with the city, the police, the neighborhood associations, community groups, and Safe Tacoma to bring about a vibrant, safe community.
May I make a quick comment? My relevance being that I was the Public Safety Committee member who introduced the motion to fund C-Safe, to fund Safe Tacoma. And one thing that motivated me to do that, and I think was discussed at the meeting that motivated the others to pass it unanimously, was because even though it seems to only affect that one particular area, folks from all throughout Tacoma Park like to have the ability to use the metro, to walk to and from it, to ride their bikes, even to drive and park in the parking lot. And I think that regardless of what ward someone lives in, when the metro area is especially dangerous or perceived as especially dangerous, that deters people from doing so, from walking to the metro, and from walking from Ward 2 or from Ward 5 down to use the metro, for fear that they'll get mugged on the way home in the metro area. So to some degree, I think it does really affect people from throughout the whole city. Although I like what Joy said, the idea of also funding the Chiefs program, because that sounded very persuasive too.
Councilmember Wright.
Thank you, Mayor Williams. To me, we're sort of talking about apples and oranges here. And both are great fruit, and we should eat both of them. And this is what I mean by apples and oranges. One is, they're apples and oranges from a budget perspective. The chief, if I understand it, is asking to hire a full-time person, which will be an ongoing expenditure by the city. I don't imagine that after the end of this year we would say, see you later at the end of the $75,000. It's an ongoing, reoccurring expenditure that we're committing to in that case. And I think that that should be part of the budget process for next year. If we want to accelerate that and have the person hired earlier, we can look into tapping into identified reserves that we have to do that.
If there's any left.
Well, there's definitely money in the general fund. If we want to move money from the general fund into this year's budget, there's also a little bit left, I think, in the, I forget the terminology. Unappropriated reserve. So it may be more than we have in the unappropriated reserve, but we definitely, if you looked in the general fund, would have the opportunity to do that as well. So that apples and oranges in that way. The second way I think it's apples and oranges is that one, Safe Tacoma is a community organizing grassroots effort, and the police department is a police department focused program. Yes, the person there will go out and talk to the community, but it's very different than the ideas percolating up from the grassroots of the community. So I think they're apples and oranges in that way, and I think we can fund both of them. And the budget implication for Safe Tacoma, my understanding and the way I viewed this is that this is not going to be an ongoing expenditure by the city. This is money that we've committed at this time to help an organization start. And my expectation would be, and I know that one of the roles that this person will, the part-time person will help them do, is to write grants and raise additional money. So I think it's we talked about this in the budget. There's reoccurring and things we're committing to versus projects or one-time expenditures, and this is a one-time expenditure. The next thing is I think we should really think about the implications if we decide not to fund this to what we're saying to DC and our partnership with DC. So I do not think that the money that DC approved was predicated on some sort of matching funds, but I do think that when we went and asked them for the money, there was the understanding that their money was matching funds towards Tacoma Park's money. And that seems really wrong to me and has the potential to have a negative impact on our relationship with DC in terms of undertaking cross-jurisdictional initiatives. So we committed to this money quite a while ago. I haven't been here for all the different maturations of why it hasn't been funded, but I think from the DC perspective, it would be incredibly important. The last thing I'll say is, or not the last thing, but the next thing I'll say is I want to make a point that Colleen pointed out to me that I should just mention, is that I don't think that I'm conflicted in voting or discussing this issue because I am on the advisory board, but as a member of the advisory board, I don't vote on behalf of the 501c3 corporation or the board of directors, and I don't have anything to gain or benefit from that relationship.